You're too weak for that. Aren't you?
No.
Fighting games have been a source of joy for many gamers for decades. From the first fighting game 1976's Sega boxing game Heavyweight Champ to the current reign of Super Smash Bros. And Mortal Kombat's latest entries, fighting games continue to indulge players' competitive and community spirit. The Soul Calibur series ranks among those that have had an undeniable impact on the genre. Despite being a relatively smaller fanbase nowadays, at least in comparison to something like Tekken or Street Fighter, Soul Calibur stood out right from the get-go for its focus on 3D movement and, especially, weapons. The story of the series revolves around the evil sword Soul Edge and its holy counterpart Soul Calibur. The struggle between good and evil is framed throughout the stories of fighters who would choose either one or the other. This sort of supernatural and fantasy style approach would open the door for many different kinds of characters and locations and, at least as far as I can tell, would set it apart from its fellow fighting games who would more often than not be set in the modern age. The Soul Calibur series has been a love of mine for multiple decades and has shaped how I view video games and characters and probably a whole lot of other things that I'm not even aware of. I remember as a kid playing these games for hours and hours, working my way through every challenge I could as like a noob 6-year-old. I still play the Soul Calibur games today, primarily the most recent entry Soul Calibur 6, but not at all to the degree that I used to play them. This is mostly because I've just gotten older and the things I'm interested in engaging with have changed. But that love has never really gone away. My relationship to making videos has fluctuated all over the place over the last 7 years, but over the last year or so, as I imagine is the case for a lot of people, or I guess 2 years, I don't know when this video is going up, I've been finding myself drawn back to the things that made me happy when I was young. And while obviously it's not the same experience now as it was when I was a kid, it feels good to re-engage with these nostalgic classics. But as an adult with university experience and life experience, I'm also curious to delve deeper into these things that I used to love. Not really for the sake of making any point, but more for the sake of taking a trip down memory lane. Thus, my plan is to reunite with all the media that shaped me growing up, and I'm going to start with the Soul Calibur games because I feel like it. These were games that really developed my competitive spirit, and while I wouldn't say I necessarily have a healthy relationship with competition now, it at least indulged that part of myself in a setting where I wouldn't lash out at other people. I guess that's a convoluted way of saying I'm not that good at fighting games. What I think drew me to these games though was the feeling of accomplishment after pulling off a cool combo or finally defeating a totally cheating enemy, and for Soul Calibur specifically, I think I was also drawn to the world these games exist in. I'm starting with Soul Calibur 2 because that was the first game I played, and I've never played the previous two games and don't own them, and I don't feel like buying a Dreamcast or whatever to be able to play them, so Soul Calibur 2 came out in arcades in 2002 and was released on the GameCube, Xbox, and PlayStation 2 in 2003. I have the GameCube version of the game, so that's the version I'm going to be talking about. There's also an HD online re-release that came out in 2013, but I also didn't play that. Soul Calibur 2 followed Soul Edge, or Soul Blade, released in 1995, and Soul Calibur, released in 1998. Soul Calibur received rave reviews and went on to become the second best-selling game on the Dreamcast. Soul Calibur is the game that introduced the series staple, the 8-way run. This allowed the player to easily move in any direction in order to improve positioning or dodge incoming attacks. From what I've seen of other modern fighting games, this is still one of the more unique features of Soul Calibur. Most fighting games are 2D fighters. Soul Blade and Soul Calibur also featured a guard impact system that allowed the player to deflect incoming attacks. Soul Calibur 2 then would have to figure out how to improve on these systems. I'm just going to insert right here because I didn't write it into my script for some reason. This video is going to be really long, so settle in. I'm doing too much. Now, like I said, I have never played Soul Blade or Soul Calibur, so I don't know exactly what it feels like to play those games, but I've seen footage of both games, so I have something to compare it to. Disclaimer that a lot of my discussion of gameplay is going to be mostly like, this feels easy to use, because like I said, I don't really know how to talk about these features in a high-level way. Soul Calibur 2 retains all of the gameplay features from the first two games. In terms of speed, Soul Calibur 2 looks about as fast, if not a bit faster paced than Soul Calibur, but with better graphics and hardware. The 8-way run also seems to be much more fluid, and having actually played 2, I can confirm that movement feels incredibly easy and useful. You're gonna have the most fun running around all over the place and setting yourself up for a good hit. This is something I wish my younger self had understood though, because I could have avoided a lot of frustration and crying. Ringouts are also possible in this game, which means if you get knocked off the edge, that's it. Dead.
Ring out!
Soul Calibur 2 added stages with walls so that it wasn't just Ring Out City anymore, but you still have those traditional stages. The addition of walls and the improved movement system definitely adds a much more complex dynamic to the fights than there used to be. It's much easier to set someone up for a ring out now, but it's also much easier for them to avoid it. The walls add the ability to increase combo strings a bit and thus increase damage dealt. Not all walls are interactable, but most are, and this would be the start of these games moving towards combo-focused gameplay. That being said, the game is not combo heavy at all at this point. At most you can string 2, maybe 3 separate attacks together, but for the most part it's going to be single hits. The other main feature is the guard impact system, which is really useful and relatively easy to use. If you land a guard impact, you have the opportunity to gain the high ground over your opponent. This is thankfully not a broken system, so it's not a guaranteed hit. Your opponent can guard impact you right back, so it encourages you to think about how you want to follow up. I really like how guard impact is implemented, and in player versus player matches it adds a lot to the experience. The new gameplay element added in Soul Calibur 2 is the Soul Charge, which is basically a charge up move that increases the attack power of the following move. Maybe there are people who have been able to make this work for them, but this is the one feature that I just don't ever bother using. Performing the Soul Charge leaves you vulnerable for the duration of it, besides moving around, and if you get hit before you perform your follow-up, the charge is cancelled. And for the amount of extra damage you do, I just never found it to be that worth it. Despite Soul Charge though, I think the gameplay of Soul Calibur 2 is far beyond some of the other fighting games I've played. It's easy to understand, it's rewarding to pull off, and it feels balanced and fair. There's a reason so many people still consider this Soul Calibur to be their favorite Soul Calibur game. Before I move on, I want to shout out 2 things because I don't know where else to put them, and I don't remember if I put them further down in my script. The first is the announcer. The announcer is ever present throughout the game, shouting the title at you, announcing who you're fighting, what round it is, presenting the general gist of each character with extravagant over-the-top dialogue, celebrating that you've won, but most damagingly, rubbing it in your face when you've lost.
The name's Mitsurugi.
He is an absolute icon, he is the moment, and seriously though, he actually adds so much to the experience. The second is the verse screen taunts.
Versus Cervantes.
Before a battle starts, the 2 combatants will appear on a versus screen and face each other as the announcer says who's fighting. If you press A, B, Y, or X, your character will scream some nonsense at the opponent, and it is easily one of my favorite things in this game.
Versus Necrid.
Some characters have really funny taunts, and some just literally scream, and it's exactly what I need. Gameplay is the most important thing in a video game. It's what's going to keep people engaged and coming back, and Soul Calibur 2 definitely succeeds in that department. But gameplay isn't always enough if there's nothing of quality to support it. What I'm going to talk about now is what I really came here to talk about, and that's everything except the gameplay. The modes, characters, stages, music, art direction, all of it. Especially considering the Soul Calibur series' more fantastical direction, all of these other elements are really cool, unique, and interesting, or at least have the opportunity to be. So I'm going to go in what feels like a natural order for discussing all of these things, and the first thing you see when you start up Soul Calibur 2 is the make or break of any fighting game, the intro movie. The purpose of an intro movie or intro sequence is to generally set up what the game is about and get the player hyped for the experience. Soul Calibur 2's intro is a series of sequences featuring each of the base game characters, except Voldo for some reason, in either a scenario that has something to do with their story or just a little vignette kind of thing. Talim, Cassandra, Yunsung, and Raphael were the new characters in this game. They get the most obvious scenes relating to their stories. Throughout there's this raven, I think, flying through a lot of the scenes, and it culminates in reaching Nightmare, and it turns out Nightmare has a pet bird because it gives him a piece of Soul Edge which wakes up Soul Edge, and then you get a shot of Inferno. You know, honestly, this movie is iconic. Like, I know I have nostalgia for it, but the pacing of it, with the music, and how it chooses to show off each of the characters, how it builds and climaxes with the reveal of the primary villain, I can't speak highly enough of this movie. It's not perfect. Like I said, it doesn't show Voldo, but that's really my only issue. I actually like that the characters you would have been familiar with already are just shown in a way to highlight their style, and if you weren't familiar with them, it still gives you this sense that the world is lived in. And again, the music is so fucking hype. It's so dynamic, and you can like feel the story of the piece without even needing the visual. My favorite part is the break for Raphael's sequence. Such incredible work, and the way this movie explodes into the title drop, we're off to a great start. There are 3 different versions of the title screen itself. The original is a blue tinted background with flames, and the evil version of Soul Calibur cover on it. The all characters unlocked version has the title tinted red with 16 character portraits behind it, and the everything unlocked version is the title tinted green with most, if not every, base game character's default weapon behind it. I would say the original is my favorite because it's cleaner and I like the blue the most, but from a satisfaction perspective, obviously the everything unlocked one because it takes a long time to get there and it feels good to be reminded of your hard work. This screen is also where you'll get the announcer, and as you progress, characters saying
Soul Calibur 2.
Which is kind of an underrated feature of these games. If you don't press start a few seconds after the announcement, the game will cycle through a couple different things. I'll get more into modes later, but the game can generate a short match between two CPUs, a weapon demonstration, or it will play the intro movie again. If it generates a match, following the match your rankings will come up, and the way rankings work in this game is for every mode, your score with each character is recorded and ranked against each other. Character usage is also recorded and may come up here. This is of course a hangover or homage to its roots as an arcade game, and again, it's a really fun, underrated touch that just adds to the experience of the game. If at any point you see a time score that seems too good to be true watching this video, it's probably because I used cheats, and that was because I was probably getting pissed off. Pressing start on the title screen will take you to the main menu. This, along with the title screen, is where we get our first look at the art style for this game. I would definitely describe it as medieval fantasy. It's a lot of blues and golds and ornate design. I think it works really well with the vibe of the game, and it's unique enough to set itself apart. My only issue with the main menu is that there isn't any music, and that seems like a really weird choice. I think literally every other game I've played has had main menu music. I don't know why this choice was made, but it's kind of a letdown after that incredible intro sequence. The character select screen is split into two sides, with the character squares and a column in the middle. Hovering over a character square will show the full model of the character on your player side. Above this, there's notification that pressing Y in the GameCube version will change your character's costume. Changing a costume will keep you on that number costume, meaning that if you switch to Talim's second costume and then scroll over to Cassandra, it will default to her second costume. I'm kind of neutral on this feature. Like, I don't think it slows down or speeds up character selection all that much, unless you were specifically only wanting to see second costumes. Selecting a character will make them do their little animation and say something battle ready and move towards the camera. Certain modes will prompt you to choose a weapon before that animation. These show up in a side-scrolling style, and you're also shown a model of the weapon with a little description about its gameplay effects. It's clean, it's straightforward. The only weapons that have mysterious descriptions are your character's soul edge weapon and your super weapon, and I don't always like that. Not every soul edge or super weapon works the same way, so you won't know until you actually play what the effect is. Stage selection is laid out in like a scroll. I don't mind this, although I'd prefer to be able to see all the stages I can choose from at once. There aren't enough stages for me to necessarily forget about any of them, but sometimes you don't know what you want until you see it. Selecting a stage will obviously start your match. So now that we've set up the match and know how to play the game, what kind of matches can we play? Ooh. The modes in the main menu are broken up into 5 categories: Original, Extra, Weapon Master, Museum, and Options. Original and Extra house all the same modes, however in Extra you're able to select a weapon and battles will include unlockable stages, unlike original versions of modes. I also think the base difficulty is higher regardless of your settings, but I can't officially confirm that, but also it does feel more difficult. Museum houses all of the art and theatrical modes that you can unlock. Options are options. Weapon Master is going to get its own section. Arcade mode is your classic fighting game story mode, pre-actual story mode that we usually get nowadays. It's the best single player way to get right into the game when you first pick it up. Each character plays through 8 battles, with the final 2 being a Destined battle and the Inferno boss fight, respectively. A Destined battle is against someone your character has a story relation to. For instance, playing as Mitsurugi will have you facing Taki as they have history. The Inferno battle is a 1-round fight broken up into 3 parts, as each third of health taken from Inferno prompts a moveset change. Each character gets an ending consisting of a good or bad ending theme, a couple of images, and story text, and then a final end screen saying you won and how much gold you earned. The difficulty, time, and round count settings can also be altered for this mode, though it will not change how your score is ranked. Playing the Extra version allows you and your opponents to have non-default weapons. This, along with time attack attack, survival, and team battle each have your recorded scores that scroll after completion. And actually losing in arcade mode will prompt a continue, which is practical but also another fun callback to the game's arcade roots. If you do continue, however, your final score will not be recorded. Arcade is the quintessential fighting game mode. It's a classic. If you're a new player, this is the best way to get into the game and get to know the characters, especially because completing arcade mode with a character will unlock their character profile, which tells you much more about them. I will say that after completing arcade mode with every character, you'll probably find yourself gravitating towards time attack or survival because you'll have seen everything arcade has to offer, but arcade is a very solid mode and I consider it an essential addition to these games. Time attack is formatted similarly to arcade mode, however there are defined difficulties to choose from and obviously there are no character endings, though the last battle is still against Inferno. Original and extra time attack both have standard, alternative, and extreme versions. Time attack, I imagine, is the single player mode people play the most after completing arcade. It essentially gives you the same experience but without having to sit through cutscenes and endings you've already seen, and on top of that you don't have to go into settings to change the difficulty like with arcade. Personally, I go back and forth between arcade and time attack interchangeably because you can still easily skip cutscenes, but I think for most people this is a good mode to have, and I can definitely appreciate having different rankings for the different difficulties. It's just nice, I think, to see your skill laid out like that, and it gives you more incentive to strive to get better. Extra extreme is a nightmare though. Survival mode has you working your way through 50 one-round battles without dying, ending in a fight against Inferno. This mode features a scaling difficulty, meaning you're gonna face easier opponents at the start versus the end. This is why I flunk out around 30 battles pretty much every time. Extra survival has standard, deathmatch, and no recovery variations. Deathmatch is the same setup except both players die in one hit, and no recovery means you're stuck with the same health you had at the end of the previous match. Survival mode is fun. It's extremely rare for me to ever get to the end, but it's a different challenge from arcade mode and time attack. Deathmatch is extremely intense. I can't always handle that mode, but I appreciate it. No recovery is definitely like hard survival mode, but I'm always bringing in a weapon that recovers health, so all variations are fun, and I like that it keeps track, 1 on the bottom of the screen how many opponents you've beaten, and 2 on the completion screen how many times you beat each character. Again, these little details just really make the whole experience. So survival mode, it's a success. Team battle allows you to select up to 3 characters and battle it out against 5 teams of 3, ending with a fight against Team Inferno. The difficulty for team battle can be set in options. Team battle feels like the novelty mode, but I think it mostly works. It's not too far off regular gameplay that it feels out of place, but it definitely changes up the dynamic of the fight. I liked this mode a lot when I was young because I got to pick all my favorite characters and have them on a team together. As an adult though, I think it's just fine. I wish it worked more like a tag system where you could swap with a different character if you were worried about dying. I know games could handle it at the time too because Tekken Tag Tournament was doing it, so I don't think that is an issue. I think it's mostly just here to be another mode but with a twist for players, and on that level I can appreciate it. As an adult though, it's just not different enough. Practice mode is practice mode. You can select characters on a stage and practice all your moves, combos, techniques, scenarios in a safe setting. You're able to set the CPU in various positions or fight against you. You can make every hit be a counter hit. You can see damage and combo data. Practice mode is useful. My only issue with it is that there is also an extra practice mode, and you can only select unlockable stages and weapons in extra mode, but otherwise everything is the same. What's the point of original practice if the only difference is more limited options? Because even if you want to use default weapons, you can just pick those. I do think it would be weird if there wasn't an extra practice mode considering the game design, but I think that's the fault of the overall design choice to give every battle mode an original and extra version. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the multiplayer modes. These are versus battle and team versus battle, both with original and extra versions. Starting with versus battle, like arcade mode for single player, this is your quintessential multiplayer mode. You and the other player select a character, weapon if you're an extra version, pick a stage, and duke it out. You're able to set the round count and time, and you can even turn on off stage selection if you're feeling a little wild. You're even able to select how much health either player will start the round with, and you can even set health to infinite if you want to play a ring out only match. So first of all, I really like that health bar option. Most people probably won't use it, but it's nice to give players the option to switch things up. However, like my issue with original practice mode, if you have extra versus battle unlocked, you should always be using it. The reason extra works for the single player modes is because it often ups the difficulty and has separate rankings. The multiplayer modes don't have this to contend with, so it kind of renders the original versions pointless. And again, the unlockable stages are only selectable in extra, so what's the point of using a limited mode? My one other issue is not being able to set up a versus CPU battle in versus battle. I understand that this is meant to be a multiplayer mode and that you can fight CPUs in the other single player modes. I'm not always interested in fighting random battles back to back. Sometimes I don't know, I just want to set up a single fight against someone I want to fight on a stage I want to fight on. For what it is, versus battle is a well done multiplayer mode that gives you almost all the options you could want. Versus team battle is the multiplayer version of team battle. Players are able to select teams of up to 8 in this mode, which is a big leap. Otherwise, this mode is exactly the same as versus battle, though I believe without the ability to change the starting health bar. Being able to select up to 8 characters has a much more dramatic effect on the experience, and in my opinion, the way team battles work in this game is better in a multiplayer setting. That being said, if your opponent beats 6 out of your 8 characters and you've only beaten 1, good luck. Versus team battle and versus battle also sort of suffer from that same issue as the practice modes, because you could just pick one team member in versus battle. However, I will say I don't consider this as much of an issue because they're advertised differently, and most people will only pick team battle if they want to play teams. I'm still not a huge fan of team battles in this game though, so I don't get much use out of this mode, but it's nice to have it since they already have single player team battles, and I definitely really liked it when I was young. Now, of course, we also have the non-battle modes, that is the museum modes, art gallery, battle theater, exhibition theater, character profiles, weapon gallery, and demo theater. Art gallery features character renders, illustrations, promo material, and other art characterized as high-res illustrations or special. I love having this mode. As I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate visual arts more, and I don't know, it's cool to see the work that's gone into a thing that you love. My favorite piece is the one of Nightmare with Siegfried layered over him. Art gallery is a great mode, but I have to ask, why is there no art of Lizardman, Assassin, or Berserker? I'll get more into those characters later and how their status as bonus characters seems to exclude them from most things, but yeah, there's nothing here of them, and I can't imagine it would have been that difficult to include their illustrations or renders. Also, while it makes sense that different kinds of art are categorized separately, I wish all the art was within one mode so I don't have to keep exiting and cutting off the literally transcendent gallery music to view other art. It's a weird choice. Battle Theater is a CPU versus CPU mode in which you set up a match between 2 computer players and you watch. You can set up a loop so that when a match ends, it automatically starts a new match, which can also be turned off at any time. You can even change the way the camera works and have it work more like it does in the title screens generated matches to move around the characters, or you can set it to free camera and you control the camera yourself. Settings like round count and time can be edited within the mode, but not difficulty for some reason, which is actually extremely annoying since changing the difficulty in settings will alter it for all applicable modes. Thus, if you want to watch higher level CPUs but play against lower level CPUs, you better remember to go out of your way to change it back. As a kid though, this was easily my favorite mode. I loved the game, and I wanted to see what I, at least at the time, thought was skilled combat, and this was before YouTube was a thing, which is what made this mode so valuable. And sometimes I just wanted it on in the background, and I'm not sure who can relate to that, but I still feel it now. It's kind of nice to just have it playing. I think of it as similar to watching actual matches or tournaments nowadays. I get to be a part of the experience without the pressure of being part of the experience, if that makes sense. So while Battle Theater isn't that necessary of a mode, you won't really be learning any new techniques from CPUs. I think it's an absolute gift to have, and I know one of the later games doesn't have it, and I remember being so pissed off about that, so all the love to Battle Theater. But the actual iconic mode here is Exhibition Theater. In this mode, characters perform a weapon demonstration that is meant to showcase their style, skill, and personality. It's an art, It's a statement, it's iconic, it's basically like a dance for each character, and it's one of the most charming offerings in the entire Soul Calibur catalog. This isn't a thing in any other fighting games I've seen, and it's a brilliant way to highlight what sets the Soul Calibur series apart, its focus on weapons. Exhibition Theater is an absolute joy, and I'm devastated that it stops appearing after a certain point in the series. It's literally part of the character of this series. Why are we getting rid of that? Character profiles is also legitimately one of my favorite non-gameplay modes in the game. I love characters and learning about characters, and that's exactly what this mode is all about. After completing arcade mode with a character, you unlock their profile, which details their life stats, history, and story, the stage they appear on, and their dialogue, and you're also given the option to just view the character model if you like. The stage thing isn't always relevant to the specific character in this game. I think it's more that they have to show off every stage, and there's no stage profile mode, but the stage usually has something to do with the characters. This mode provides you with their full name, age, birthplace and date, blood type, which feels like kind of a sick joke, their family, their journey, and why Soul Edge matters to them. I say Soul Edge because canonically most people don't know about Soul Calibur and don't even fully know what Soul Edge is. It's a whole thing, it doesn't matter for now. What I really love is just how these profiles are written. Some things are clearly spelled out for you, but other details are vague enough for you to have your own interpretation. For instance, Yunsung's profile says that his mother's whereabouts are unknown as opposed to dead or she left or anything specific, and I think that's really fun. I mean, depressing in this case, but fun. You're left to imagine what that means and how that might have led to the Yunsung we know today. This goes for stage descriptions as well. The Eurydice Shrine Gallery states that the sword and shield normally on display here have mysteriously vanished. In this case, Cassandra's profile reveals that she took them to go after Sophitia. The option to listen to character dialogue is also hilarious to me, if for no other reason than to listen to out of context pain noises and death cries and see their face contort up close. It's also a really good way to appreciate the work of the voice actors in a setting where you're not distracted. So character profiles is an absolute win of a mode for me. Yes, 10 out of 10. Yes. Weapon Gallery allows you to view all of the weapons you've unlocked in the game in full 3D render glory. It also provides you with a little backstory for each weapon, which is a totally surprising and underrated feature, and the stories are written in a way that hint towards its stats, which are otherwise directly stated in the character select screen. Yet another opportunity for lore. Absolutely. The music from Art Gallery also plays in this mode. I'm telling you, transcendent. However, the legendary weapons really need to be labeled better. Neither this mode nor Weapon Select really tell you what the legendary weapon effects are, and they're different for each character, and that's kind of a problem. Demo Theater features all the movies that can be unlocked in the game, the Weapon Master opening and ending clips, the home and arcade versions of the intro movie and the arcade ending, and the character endings from arcade mode. I don't actually spend a lot of time in this mode beyond making this video, but again, it's nice to have it, and it's especially nice to have the arcade version intro and ending which don't otherwise appear in the game. My only question is, why is this mode called Demo Theater? I guess it'd be a little weird to call it Movie Theater, but... And finally, we have options, which are game options, man. You can also find your character usage records and mode rankings here. You can set game, controller, display, and sound settings here, and even change the character dialogue to Japanese if you feel like it. I have no revolutionary thoughts on this. I think the options are appropriate and easy to understand. My only thing again is that it's annoying that I can't change mode difficulty in the modes. Like, why do I have to come all the way back out to options to do that? Weapon Master is a story but mostly challenge mode made up of 10 chapters, 4 sub-chapters, and 2 extra chapters, each with their own missions and bonus versions. Weapon Master begins with a text-based cutscene introducing you to the story of warriors seeking Soul Edge. The rest of the story is flamed through text screen chapter introductions and missions with descriptions that also continue the story. You play as any character you want, which you can change at any time. The difficulty gets progressively harder. Bonus versions of missions, which you unlock after completing the original final battle, are typically more difficult versions on top of that. Thus, changing your weapon and or character may be a good strategy. Missions can include dungeons, but most often are single round challenges that utilize gimmicks like landmines, slippery floors, and invisible enemies. Completing missions awards you gold, which can be used to purchase weapons, costumes, and modes. This is how you unlock most of the options in museum mode. Completing Weapon Master is your only way of unlocking showing all the characters, stages, all the weapons, and modes that are available for purchase. Lizardman, for instance, is the last character you can unlock by completing every Weapon Master mission and bonus mission, some of which don't become available until level 72 or higher. And yes, there is a leveling system in Weapon Master, but it doesn't affect your stats as far as I can tell. Weapon Master is more or less a story mode featuring you as the main character. The story itself isn't anything that special, but it does add a lot to each chapter and mission if you read the little story attached to it. The most important other characters in the story are your friend and rival Leon and the big bad Varel?
Inferno.
I'm gonna go with Varel. You go on a journey to find Soul Edge and eventually run into Varel, who is the evil sword bearer. When I played this as a kid, it definitely went right over my head just how much story is here. While it's not super interesting plot-wise, it does a pretty good job world building, which is honestly just as important. However, what I really like about Weapon Master is that it's optional whether or not you actually read all of the little story blurbs. As this is a fighting game, the fighting is technically what should come first, and this does a good job of reinforcing that. I actually like the story. It felt very mythological, medieval fantasy to me, which is very on brand. My one issue is that I wish Leon ended up getting Soul Edge for a minute and being the final boss. I think that would have added a lot more weight to the final fight, considering we actually know him and have known him since the beginning and seen him many times throughout the journey. Should I have said spoiler alert? Despite my feelings though, Weapon Master's story is very appropriate for its setting, but if you don't care to engage with the story, you won't really lose much. It all depends on what interests you. As for the missions themselves, there are 58 total missions, each with a bonus mission, so 116 total. I would say like 80 to 85% of them are fun and fair, and a slightly lower percentage are unique. Most of the challenge gimmicks are enjoyable, though I maybe definitely had a meltdown trying to defeat 6 enemies in a row with less than 30 seconds to do so. My favorite gimmicks are the invisible enemies, though not the one where it's only the lower half of Charade's body, and the wall and floor bounce ones. They're fun little quirks to the gameplay that don't ruin your life, but definitely change how you play a little bit. I actually wish we had a mode outside of Weapon Master where you could take advantage of these gimmicks, like a special versus mode or something. They're already in the game, so why not make them available as settings? I also think this would play really well in a party setting. The missions in Weapon Master are chosen pretty well, and they do a decent job of tying them into the story of each mission. Like in one, you have to deal with strong winds and slippery edges because you've climbed to the top of a windmill to fight someone. It does eventually get to a point where you've played all the gimmicks, but scaling difficulty and not being able to complete Weapon Master all in one session does a pretty good job to curb this. The other types of missions are dungeons. These take advantage of the Egyptian crypt and labyrinth stage variations and have you literally dungeon crawling to the final boss. Each battle is in a one-on-one with the possibility of a gimmick, and you get unlimited chances to win the battle. Most dungeons have multiple paths you can take, but you can only see one room ahead, so it's mostly guesswork if you're going the right way. I personally really enjoy the dungeons because they're single battles, unlimited chances, and beating a dungeon gives you a good amount of experience. I wouldn't call any of the dungeons particularly hard, but they can definitely vary. And even if you do lose, it doesn't kick you out of the dungeon after, being like, LOL, you lost. My only gripe with dungeons is that you can't save your progress, so once you start a dungeon, you have to complete the whole thing or start all over. I'm sure this is a software limitation or something, and if you have the time, then it's not really an issue. But if you do have limited time, then you might as well put it off, because some have literally dozens of battles to complete. Aside from that though, I like dungeons, and I like the music that plays for the regular battles. It's like a more low-key version of the main theme of that stage. Weapon Master is also where you buy weapons, costumes, and modes. Playing Weapon Master for the first time unlocks the ability to earn gold, so you want to be sure to at least sit through the opening cutscene before you play anything else. You can earn gold from playing any mode in the game, which is good because there are a lot of things for you to buy. Mostly weapons, but the modes and costumes get really expensive too. I've completed all of Weapon Master and played a few missions multiple times, and I still have weapons to buy. While it's a little annoying that completing all of Weapon Master still won't get you anywhere near the gold requirement, I do like that this incentivizes you to keep playing the game. However, I wish that when you wanted to purchase a weapon, you could see its stats. As it is, you go in blind unless you happen to already know what that weapon does. Same with the costumes, although I'm less harsh on those because they're purely cosmetic. All in all, not necessarily how I would go about designing the store, but it could have been much worse. I think Weapon Master is still a fantastic mode to have in Soul Calibur. It really forces you to stretch your skills in every direction and has a decent, if predictable, story to help support it as a challenge mode. And those are the modes. I think Soul Calibur has a decent amount of diverse gameplay available, and it really encourages you to get better and top your own high scores. However, I do really think the original versus extra game mode design falls a little flat, and there definitely should have been a mode to take advantage of the gimmicks in Weapon Master. I'm not really rating anything, but 7 out of 10. So we've now arrived at the protein section of this Soul Calibur 2 sandwich, tied with gameplay for the most important part of any fighting game, the characters. As with any fighting game, gameplay is only as good as its characters, and Soul Calibur 2 does not disappoint. The roster features 23 characters, 8 of whom are unlockable, and 3 of whom are bonus characters, also unlockable. Character is my favorite thing to talk about in any piece of media, and with 23 characters to discuss, we'll probably be here a while, so grab some snacks. Let's do this.
Versus Mitsurugi.
Mitsurugi Haishiro is a samurai-style character wielding a katana and trying to compensate for his depressing life. He is 29 years old, born into a poor family in Japan, and his family all died from illness. Despite this, he grew into one of the most fearsome warriors around, forever striving to become the best. But after coming face to face with the rifle, a relatively new invention in the late 16th century, Mitsurugi learned of Soul Edge, supposedly the most powerful sword in the world. He searched for the sword and was eventually given a piece of it by a mysterious man, and was soon witness to the destruction by others' search for Soul Edge. In his destined battle, he faces Taki, whom he clearly has history with, and in his arcade ending, he finally finds Soul Edge after years of searching, only to realize the sword is evil and destroys it. Not believing this was the true sword, he once again sets out to find the fated sword. Mitsurugi's story is pretty straightforward, but I think there's a lot of subtle depth to it. I'll be saying this a lot, but I see his story as kind of tragic. He was born into poverty, and his whole family was taken from him by sickness, not even a person that he can want revenge on. So his drive to become the greatest warrior ever and being so obsessed with this triumph over the rifle reads as him, in a metaphorical way, trying to prove that he has no weakness and is more powerful than even death. It's like he can't bring them back and he can't target any specific person, so it becomes this self-imposed trial kind of thing as a response to the non-combat death of his family. I guess they still taught him good values though, because even when he does reach Soul Edge, he is strong enough to withstand temptation and destroy it despite what it could give him. And I actually like this reading of it too, because it's his morality and will that determines his fate, not just his physical strength. And yeah, maybe he's a little cocky, but at least he has the track record to back it up. Also, in regards to his destined battle with Taki, the game doesn't really give you any indication as to what their history is or why they're destined, but I read on Fandom Soul Calibur wiki that Taki was probably after him for the piece of Soul Edge he has, and that makes sense, so I'll go with that, on top of the fact that she's clearly messed with him multiple times before. Mitsurugi's moveset is pretty much exactly how I imagined a samurai in a fighting game would play. It feels very traditional and precise with just a bit of flair because that's exactly how Mitsurugi is. He's not particularly difficult to play, but you'll likely have to get used to his stances, which I am not very good at personally. I love the katana, and you would think that would mean I like playing as him, but honestly, not really. I just can't get into the stances, and he's a little slow for my taste. Mitsurugi's look, understandably, is very samurai inspired. It's practical, not very flashy, and occasionally has weird floaty armor. My favorite part of it is his long hair because I think it pulls the whole look together. That being said, this outfit kinda does nothing for me. It makes sense, it's appropriate, it's good for battle, but it's boring. And there's nothing really to do about that. They successfully fulfilled the concept. His second costume, however, is wonderful. The giant ponytail with the strands hanging in front of his face, the black and white color scheme, the flame detailing on the pants. This look is iconic. I'm gonna be saying iconic a lot in this video. It definitely gives second costume vibes, but I will always pick this costume. He was also lucky enough to get a third costume, and let me just say this now, the unlockable costumes in my mind are more novelties than anything else. They're less meant to be normal, appropriate costumes, and more like specific concepts, save for like Link. Mitsurugi's third costume is clearly modeled after something specific, but I don't know what. He gives me get off my lawn vibes, which is not a bad look, but you know, it's a third costume. I don't know if it's worth talking about every character's voice acting, but I want to say in Mitsurugi's case, I don't know if it's because I'm familiar with him in other games or because I'm studying every character for a video, but his voice feels feels a little off for me. Watch me take this back later. His delivery is really funny on some lines though. My favorite is,
You'll be in hell before me.
because the way he says it sounds like he meant to say see you in hell but screwed up and said you'll be in hell and then quickly had to correct himself. Quality content. Mitsurugi's weapon demonstration is a mixed bag for me. The choreography is pretty good and I'm a fan of when he stabs the ground, but the editing is so quick and awkward that it kind of hurts my eyes to look at. Also, I think it's a bit too short. It's not terrible though, and it does feel very Mitsurugi. All in all, Mitsurugi is a classic Soul Calibur character. He fills that samurai void very nicely and I can empathize with him despite him thinking that he's all that, because I know where it's coming from. His story is good, his playstyle is enjoyable, he doesn't have any bad costumes, and his weapon demonstration is good despite the director kind of doing him dirty.
Versus Link.
Basically every Soul Calibur game gets a guest character, and Soul Calibur 2 GameCube Edition got Legend of Zelda's Link. I feel like the consensus was that Link was at least the most iconic of the 3 guest characters, if not the best, and for good reason. Link translates very well into the Soul Calibur universe without ever feeling like he or the franchise are being compromised. His backstory is extremely Legend of Zelda, which is to be expected. Link travels to the Soul Calibur universe after the influence of Soul Edge starts to encroach on his universe, thus he must defeat the evil. His destined battle is with Raphael, which doesn't really have any story relevance, but it turns out every guest character's destined battle is with Raphael, so I guess they just picked a bad guy with personality. Link's arcade ending sees him successfully destroy Soul Edge and return to his world. It's not much, but he is the guest character, so I would expect his inclusion to focus more on his gameplay, and that it does. Link is clearly based on his Ocarina of Time incarnation primarily, and potentially the Smash Bros games as well, and his moveset is a great balance between all the different things you've seen him do. Sword slashes and spins, rolls, boomerangs, arrows, bombs, it's all here and it all feels very fluid. This appearance feels very true to the character but doesn't sacrifice enjoyable play for accuracy, and again he feels like he fits right in with the fantasy style world of Soul Calibur. This is exactly what I want out of a guest character. This feels like Link. Chef's kiss. Link's look prior to Breath of the Wild has been very uniform throughout every appearance, and here is no exception. Obviously his face is stylized a little differently to fit in this universe, but it still looks like Link. He has 4 costumes, and they're all the same except for color swaps: green, red, blue, and light blue. Everyone knows Link's design. It's fashionable, it's great, it's iconic, and all the color swaps look really good. I don't really have anything else to say beyond that. Link's weapons, of course, also act as references to his other game appearances, like the Mirror Shield and the Great Fairy Sword, but my favorite one is the bug catching net because that's really freaking cute. Link's screams are wonderful. This is the same voice actor who did Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and the first 2 Smash Bros games. He's the one character whose constant screaming I don't really get that tired of. Link's weapon demonstration is also so fun. It shows off all his attacks, he does multiple back handsprings in a row, which actually the direction of the camera for that moment is super cool, and he finishes with a fiery spin attack. It's great, definitely one of the better performances, and the Legend of Zelda music is always nice. Link is basically the perfect guest character. There's not really much to say beyond that. I think they nailed every element of this appearance, and that's why he's a beloved Soul Calibur guest. His story works, his moves are fun, his style is good, everything you could want as a Link fan is here.
Versus Necrid.
Necrid is an interesting character. He was actually created by Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, which I think explains a lot. Necrid's profile states that his age, birth date and place, family, and even blood type are all unknowns. The only piece of information we're given is that he was a warrior who found Soul Edge but was immediately poisoned by the evil sword and transformed into the monster he is now. Now he seeks the pieces of Soul Edge in an attempt to ease his constant pain. His destined battle is with Talim, who instantly recognizes that he was once human, and his arcade ending sees him defeating Inferno, which awakens a deep part of himself. He then takes Soul Edge into the void, which I assume is where he came from, and closes the void behind him. I'm not exactly sure what's going on there, like maybe in Spawn's bio there's some reference to this, but what I'm definitely getting is that life has not been kind to Necrid. His ending describes him as an honorable warrior, and the names for many of his voice lines indicate like an earnest desire for inner peace. His ending doesn't even clearly give him this though, he just disappears with Soul Edge, never to be seen again. As a kid, I definitely didn't realize how much of a tragic character he is. All I saw was his appearance. Wow, I guess this is a lesson to never judge a book by its cover. Obviously, we're not given enough to really know who Necrid was before encountering Soul Edge, but regardless, this would be a terrible fate for anyone. Hashtag thoughts and prayers for Necrid. Necrid has a pretty interesting moveset in that all of his moves are borrowed from other characters. He has some sort of magical power, so he manifests other weapons to fight, and I really like that concept. I feel like I remember people not liking it very much at the time, and on the one hand, I get it. He has no original moves, and since they're all borrowed, his moveset is never going to be the best version of any of those styles. But on the other hand, it's so enjoyable to play and practice. He's very easy to learn. I never once felt like I was flailing trying to play him, and I also like the sound his attacks make. It's almost like swinging a lightsaber around. Now, I can't really say whether or not this moveset feels accurate to Necrid, because again, we don't really know anything about him, but regardless, it's fun, and I think he was just meant to be a fun, experimental kind of character. I think for most people though, what makes Necrid stand out and what has people accusing him of being out of place is his appearance. He's got this kind of goblin thing going on, which isn't inherently bad. I actually like the design overall, but he feels like he would fit more in like Spawn's universe than Soul Calibur's, which makes sense, I suppose. He does look a little bland and out of place compared to the other characters. I do really like the glowing container on his chest though. I assume that's where his power comes from, and it is a good goblin design overall. His second costume has a little more going on, though by that I just mean he's wearing a mask now and his color scheme is bolder. I like the pop of color and the gas mask situation is cute, but I still agree with people's mixed feelings about his look. He's a good looking character, just maybe not for this game. I have nothing to say about his voice. It's appropriate, it's good. If I don't say anything about a character's voice from now on, just assume I'm okay with it. His weapon demonstration has me going back and forth. It's literally just him briefly swinging around his weapons, but mostly posing and doing hand choreography, which I can't see because this is a GameCube game. On the one hand, it's super charming and cute. Like, he looks like he worked really hard on it, and I can't do him dirty for that. However, this is a weapon demonstration, and his weapon is super cool. He can literally manifest anything he wants out of thin air, and he chooses to manifest two swords, which he promptly sticks in the ground. I'm sorry, Necrid, but you can do better, buddy. Come on. Necrid is an interesting character. Personally, I like him because of his story and playstyle. I'm not really bothered by the fact that he has no original moves, because we also have many other characters that do have original moves, so I think there's room for this experiment. I do understand people's distaste for his design, but come on, you can't deny that he's kinda cute.
Versus Taki.
Ah yes, we've reached our first female Soul Calibur character, aka a questionably but also fiercely dressed bad bitch whose screams will haunt your nightmares. It's Taki. Taki is not even arguably one of the most iconic Soul Calibur characters ever. She's a ninja, she wears body paint, she's a legend, and she is the moment. Taki is a 29-year-old ninja from Japan whose family all died of illness and has been training under her master Toki. Taki's story picks up after the events of the last two games, in which she defeated the original Soul Edge wielder, Cervantes, and saved Sophitia's life, during which time she fused her demonic blade Mekimaru with a piece of Soul Edge she removed from Sophitia's body. This did not go as planned, however, and only made Mekimaru more of an evil handful. In an effort to finish what she started, and presumably also to keep her clan safe, she left the Fuma Ninja clan and searched for Soul Edge, hoping the clash between it and Mekimaru would destroy both. Once she found its new wielder, Nightmare, though, he was already defeated, and so she was forced to look into other methods. Time passed. One day she was attacked by Fuma ninjas sent by Toki looking for information on Soul Edge. Knowing how evil Soul Edge is, she vowed to never let Toki obtain the sword. Taki's destined battle is with Mitsurugi, and again, they clearly have some history, and she clearly kind of enjoys running into him. In her ending, she defeats Inferno and presumably continues her search for Soul Edge and or a way to deal with Mekimaru. I say presumably because all it says is that she defeats the demon and sets her sights east, and eventually she senses a Soul Eater and goes after it, which sounds like Soul Edge. Taki's story is kind of confusing to me, mostly in its revolving around Mekimaru. I'm sure there's a better explanation in previous games, but this game tells you it's like evil, but it also captures demons, and I'm like, what is it though? Where is it from? How does this relate to Soul Edge? Does it not? And I only care because it's such a big part of her story, and while I can understand the emotional journey and stakes with what we have, I'd like to actually get to know what we're dealing with. What I do like about Taki though is her personality, and I think it's interesting that she and Mitsurugi are so similar. Taki's mission is about stopping evil, but I kinda get the vibe that she, like Mitsurugi, is desperately trying to prove how powerful and capable she is. Both their families were taken by disease, and both of them seem to have responded with this need to prove how powerful they are. Taki especially, like she would rather leave her own clan than risk any of them, but especially Toki being taken by evil. It's very altruistic, but it's also very selfish, and I really like that. She's also pretty cocky, so she and Mitsurugi have that in common too. So yeah, I like Taki. Also, as a playable fighter, I think Taki is a lot of fun. Now that being said, she's super mobile with her jumping around, rolling, and all around hyperpop movement, and I don't always know how to handle it, but mostly she's fun. I usually stick to basic slice kick combos and blasting people into the air, but it's nice to have other options sometimes, even if it puts me at risk of ring outing myself. It's exactly how I'd want a ninja character to play, and it has lots of personality, and her constant shrieking and screaming is kind of everything. Alright, so now we're at the point in the video where I address the elephant in the room, the female character designs in Soul Calibur. So my internal struggle is this. I 100% think that it's totally unnecessary to design these women with like giant boobs that are hanging out, skin tight outfits, barely any outfits, no pants, etc. I 100% think it contributes to the problems of gender representation and sexism in video games and video game culture, and I 100% wish this was not the choice these games and many other games had made in how they chose to design women. Basically, my dilemma is I feel all of that, but I also want to be able to just enjoy something for what it is and be able to talk about it without having to constantly bring in the caveat. And like, to be fair, all of these women are fully realized characters. Like, there's no clear quality difference between the women and the men in that regard. It's literally just that the female characters are clearly more sexualized than the men, and the reality of the world is that it has a worse impact on women than men being sexualized does on men. So yes, I 100% have a problem with the sexualization, but I also want to be able to enjoy the game and designs for what they are. We'll get more into that with certain other characters, but some of the female characters I think are actually the best designed in the entire game. So I don't know if everything I'm saying right now makes sense, and I'm not sure what the correct approach is, but for the sake of the video, I'm going to set my problems with sexualization, except for one character, aside so I can talk about the looks. So that's my caveat, and also I'm sure there's a conversation to be had here about empowerment, especially since these characters aren't really defined by their sexuality mostly, but frankly I don't feel equipped to properly delve into that conversation, and that's not really the purpose of this video, but I did want to bring it all up because I don't want people to think I don't see it. Trust me, I see it. So Taki's design is this like skin-tight red catsuit with an emblem on one leg and armored shoulders, forearms, and shins, and a ponytail, and like some armor under her boobs. To be fair, this is an iconic look, but I only kind of half like it. My problem is that it doesn't feel finished. I think a big part of that is, besides the like breast support augmentation thing, which really questioning how much support that gives her, most of her body is just this skin-tight single-tone piece, and I think it's kind of a little boring. I'm honestly convinced that it became so iconic just because, one, she looks hot, but two, because the red color is really gorgeous. I don't know if that's like a hot take, but I think the outfit is being almost completely carried by that shade of red. Her second costume is a bunch of things, including a leotard, a jacket, more shoulder and forearm armor, but this time with more arm padding, thigh-high boots, and no pants. To describe it makes it kind of sound like a mess, but I think it actually mostly comes together. The colors are black and white with some yellow accents, so it doesn't pop as much as the first costume, but somehow this look does serve a little. This absolutely feels like an alternate outfit, but it's one that I wouldn't be mad at if I was forced to use. Taki was also given the privilege of a third outfit, and well, it's definitely a third outfit. I think the big draw of costume 3 is that her hair is down, because we all love when our faves do something different with their hair. I mean, I don't think it looks good, but it's different, so that's exciting. The outfit itself is a mix of 1 and 2 in terms of coverage, and this one actually gives her shorts, but I don't know, this outfit is super forgettable. I appreciate that they wanted to make it like a green outfit, but I don't think the concept worked out very well. I like Taki's voice performance. What? It fits in so well with her writing and general appearance in this iteration, this kind of cocky, driven, youthful sounding person, and the delivery has that perfect weirdness these older fighting games seem to have, and Taki probably has the best screams in the game, besides Link, of course. Finally, her weapon demonstration, it's also good. Again, it feels like proper traditional ninja fare with that slight snarky, cocky Taki flair to it. Lots of kicks, lots of love. Taki is one of the queens of Soul Calibur, and despite being the co-founder of the Soul Calibur series Sexualization of All Females organization, she is a legend. Her story is compelling, her moveset is super fun, and her style is fierce.
Versus Talim.
I I am one with the payback!
Okay, so when I was talking about setting aside my feelings about sexualization in these games, I said I would do it for every character except one. Well, that one is Talim, the 15-year-old. Talim is 15 years old from somewhere in Southeast Asia called Village of the Wind and is known as the last priestess of the wind. She is the daughter of the village shaman and she lives with her family and pet bird. Talim uses elbow blades as her weapons. Her story is framed by the changing times in her part of the world as Europeans move further east, threatening the cultures and people's faith in the wind deity. Despite this, Talim is a beacon of faith and hope, which is why she is considered the last priestess of the wind. Her story began when she felt the evil aura of Soul Edge, which put her into a brief coma. This was the day that Soul Edge reawakened. Sometime later, a Westerner gave her a metal shard, which Talim recognized as that same evil and took it upon herself to fix the situation, despite her elder's wishes. Talim's destined battle is with Yunsung, whom she pleads with to turn back, but he refuses.
Please!
I also want to shout out the battle with Necrid again because these both do a good job reinforcing Talim's compassion and selflessness, trying to help these people despite not having any personal connection to them. The way her ending is worded is a little confusing to me, but essentially she succeeds in her quest and I guess destroys Soul Edge. It doesn't say destroy specifically, but it's basically like the influence of the evil was removed, so I'm assuming that's what happened. Talim is a very altruistic, spiritual, and empathetic character. Her setup and that scene with Necrid clearly established this. She seems to be very matter-of-fact, like her deciding on her own to go deal with Soul Edge, and while she's pretty black and white about things, she's also 15, so that makes sense. So on the one hand, she's not super interesting because she's 100% just a good person who wants to do good, but on the other hand, I like having characters like this. She brings a very useful, hopeful kind of energy, and I appreciate it. I will always take a character with inner turmoil first, but by no means does this make Talim a bad character. Talim's moveset is really fun. It's pretty fast-paced, it's mobile, and it's a lot less overwhelming than like Taki's can be. I think if you were new to the game and trying to pick up a character, Talim would be a pretty good place to start. It's also aesthetically pleasing to watch her fight. I think it's the way the elbow blades move. It's just really graceful and lively. Alright, so now let's talk about Talim's look. So what I'm gonna say first is that I don't think it's a bad look. It does look very youthful. It's cute. The colors are nice. However, she is wearing a tube top and low-rise pants, and normally I'd be like, whatever, as I said with Taki. But Talim is a literal child. She's literally a minor, and yes, I'm well aware that real-life 15-year-olds might dress like this, and none of her dialogue is sexual, but this character was created by grown-ass people who made the choice to have her ass almost hanging out. To be fair, I don't know if her look is based off of some real historical figure. I don't know. Please stop sexualizing children. It's really gross. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Costume 1. It's nice, but nah, make her an adult. Costume 2 isn't much better. It's just now instead of stomach showing, we have short shorts with slits on the side. Also, this outfit kind of makes her look even more like a child. Costume 3 is by far the best one. It actually gives off priestess vibes, and while you can still see some skin, it's mostly covered by this drape thing, which also looks nice. Costume 3 is the best. I don't want to talk about it anymore. I really like Talim's weapons. Elbow blades are something I never would have seen coming in a fighting game, but they're such a cool concept. I like her voice too. I think with her being a young character and them characterizing her like a small child, it would have been really easy to give her like a screechy baby voice, but thankfully that's not the case. And of course, Talim's weapon demonstration is top tier. Again, I think I just love the elbow blades. It makes me feel how I imagine other people feel when watching like a nunchuck routine or something. Talim is a good character, like as a person and also just as a character. I'll never be able to get over my uncomfortableness over her design. Like, I want to make it very clear, this is not a good way to depict children in video games. You literally could have made her 18, and while that wouldn't make it that much better, at least I wouldn't be vomiting every time I think about it. Otherwise though, I do like Talim, and paired with her elbow blades, I think she's an invaluable member of the roster. Just please give her some clothes. I'm begging you.
Versus Cassandra.
What?
I'm sure you've noticed that a lot of my gameplay footage is of Cassandra, and it's because she's the best character in the game. Don't bother debating me. I'm correct. Cassandra is a 21-year-old sword and shield user from Athens who lives in relative peace and harmony with her family, which includes her sister, Soul Calibur series legend, Sophitia. She witnessed firsthand the aftermath of everything that went down with Sophitia in the previous games, defeating Soul Edge and almost dying in the process, and in the present day, Sophitia has disappeared once again. Cassandra, soon after, discovered a piece of Soul Edge in Sophitia's room and became extremely upset knowing that Sophitia had gone out looking for the supposedly destroyed sword once again. Cassandra angrily confronted the statue of Hephaestus, the god who tasked Sophitia with destroying Soul Edge, asking why Sophitia must be put in this situation again. And in that moment, she noticed that the piece of Soul Edge reacted to the holy sword and shield held in the shrine. She realized then that Soul Edge must still exist, and she would not allow Sophitia to take this on alone. Taking the holy sword and shield, she set out to destroy Soul Edge and save her sister once and for all. Cassandra's destined battle is with Charade for some reason. Every character needs a destined battle for their arcade run, and I think Cassandra just drew the short straw. In any case, this happens and she's confused as hell, which same. In her ending, she destroys Soul Edge, but almost immediately forgets about that when she realizes how destroyed the Holy Sword and Shield are now, and worries about how she can get away with that without anyone noticing. I think that's so cute. I love Cassandra. If you couldn't tell, her backstory, destined battle, and ending all paint her as this like fiery, sassy person with a heart of gold, and that is exactly the kind of character I love. She cares deeply about her sister, and this isn't about her being jealous or anything. She just wants to protect her sister and thus wants to go in her place. I also like the inclusion of her confronting her god and having this like crisis of faith a little bit, and then just her personality. I love how spunky she is. She literally doesn't give a shit. I don't know how to explain it properly. I just really like that she's got this attitude, but she's also allowed to have a deep well of empathy for those she cares about. She is my queen. Of course I love her playstyle too. She's my main, so obviously. She shares that newcomer accessibility with Talim. Her moves are super straightforward, they're very useful, and it doesn't feel like a chore to play as her. My favorite move is I can't and won't explain why, but the way she shouts "come on, gotcha" and just does a backflip for no reason is just her outfits. I really like her outfits. Her main look is admittedly a little boring in terms of detailing, but it's still decent and it works really well for her. I like the hairstyle and the color scheme is great. It really gives Athens holy warrior vibes with a little bit of Cassandra's influence in design, and especially the fact that she's actually wearing tights. And that's not just like a prude thing. I think this works specifically because she's wearing those tights. So yeah, I guess you could say I'm a fan. Costume 2 is gonna make me almost a hypocrite though. I think I might like this look just a smidge better. Not for Cassandra specifically, but like in general I like the aesthetic more. The color scheme is so different and the design of the outfit with the boots works so well with it, and her hair tied with this bow is a much more memorable look than just a bob and headband. But also I can't ignore the fact that she's not wearing pants. It feels very weird for her to not wear pants, but I also, I guess, see what they were going for since the boots are so tall. But also she's not wearing pants. I've mentioned that third costumes kind of feel more like novelty costumes a lot of the time. Cassandra is absolutely an example of that. Costume 3 is a play on the Greek god Hermes, and though I do not like this outfit at all, I can't deny that they absolutely nailed what they were going for. But man, that helmet. I have to shout out Cassandra's English voice actress, Debbie Rogers. She's absolutely killing it. She sells Cassandra's sassy but empathetic attitude so perfectly as to never make her annoying, and I am so grateful. Great job, Debbie. Cassandra's weapon demonstration is cute. It looks like she's practicing her moves before a duel, and it's really charming. I love it. So yeah, I love Cassandra. Everything about her as a person and as a playable character in a fighting game just comes together basically flawlessly. I'm pretty sure Cassandra was also my main as a kid, so that's how I know I've always had good taste. The no pants thing is still for me, but Cassandra is my queen, and honestly, don't come for me, outshines Sophitia. Whoops.
Versus Yunsung.
Welcome to one of my sexual awakening characters. Yunsung is an 18-year-old Chinese sword user from Korea and was the character I had confusing feelings about when I was a kid. Yunsung is an up-and-coming swordsman who idolizes Hwang, a character from the previous Soul Calibur games. As he got older, he felt driven to surpass Hwang in ability in order to prove himself. Eventually, he was able to challenge Hwang, but Hwang was not interested as he was preoccupied with the war. Seung Mina, in an attempt to help Yunsung, gave him an heirloom weapon that has the ability to reflect the wielder's true self. Looking into the blade, he realized that challenging someone for personal reasons is pretty childish, and to really prove himself he must find Soul Edge, the sword Hwang had failed to find. Yunsung believed Hwang would have to acknowledge him then, and thus set out on his quest. Yunsung's destined battle is with Talim, who pleads with him to turn back, but he refuses. In his ending, he succeeds in finding Soul Edge, but as he reaches for the sword, he stops. In this moment, he realizes that all he needs is belief in himself and returns home to fight for his country without the power of the evil sword. I know a lot of people think Yunsung is annoying, and I mean, yeah, he's an arrogant kid with a chip on his shoulder, but that's also kind of what makes him endearing. His profile says that his father died from illness and that his mother's whereabouts are unknown, which is very mysterious, but in any case, still tragic. Thus, Yunsung's family became his master and his dojo, and when you grow up in an environment where your value is based on your fighting prowess, plus, you know, the dead family, it only makes sense that he would grow into this kind of person. He's constantly trying to prove his worth, but being a kid, he doesn't fully understand what that means. His ending says a lot about him, though, because even when he has the opportunity to take Soul Edge and become more powerful than anyone, he doesn't take it. Clearly, somewhere along the way, someone taught him the value of believing in yourself, and it literally saved his life. I love Yunsung. There's not a whole lot to his story, but it's solid, and I want to see him succeed. He was my crush as a kid because, obviously, and now I just want to give him a big hug. Yunsung is fun to play as. He's not quite as fast as I'd like him to be, but I love the Chinese sword style, and it's not hard to get the hang of his moves. And I like comboing with his crane stance. A lot of moves combo from or into this, and it's satisfying to pull off those combos. So now we're going to talk about his look. I don't think I have to explain to you why a kid who's starting to be attracted to people would be attracted to this. And before you come for me for being a hypocrite about character showing skin, if it's in line with the character's story or personality to show some skin, then I don't have a problem with it. Yunsung is a cocky kid who literally has dialogue talking about how hot he thinks he is, so with that in mind, it makes sense to me that he would show some midriff here and his whole chest in costume 2. I love costume 1 because it does feel like something he would wear, and also it stands out. The bright red hair, the orange and white color scheme, the design of the clothes, it's so visually appealing and absolutely one of the more memorable costumes in the game, and I really love his hair. For some reason, costume 2 gives him brown hair instead, but again, I guess it's just because we love different hair colors, but it instantly makes him less interesting to look at. The color scheme here is also more toned down. This costume actually makes him look a bit older, and while it's not really a bad outfit, costume 1 works so well because it stands out, but it also reflects his youthfulness. Bright colors are often more associated with younger people, and his whole personality screams I'm a kid, so costume 1 is better. Also, Yunsung, baby, having your whole chest exposed in battle when you clearly have access to armor is not the correct choice. I don't have a lot to say about his voice except that I like it, and I think it's funny hearing him say,
I'm not going to lose to fools like you,
with perfect rhythm. Yunsung's weapon demonstration is appropriate for him. It shows off his sword skills, kicks, and ridiculous flexibility. It's pretty good. Actually, I think the most arrogant thing about Yunsung is that he'll just literally jump into full splits after beating you without a second thought like it's nothing. Literally, go fight. I have a special place in my heart for Yunsung because of my long-standing relationship with him. I'm not great with him, but he's such an entertaining character, and deep down is just a kid desperate to prove himself worthy of love and attention, and isn't that what we all are? Oh my god, also, I don't think there's any hard-coded intro dialogue before battles, but I swear to god, every time I play Cassandra against Yunsung, she says,
You're definitely not my type.
Versus Raphael.
To be honest, I'm pathetic. Damn you.
Raphael is a 32-year-old disgraced French royal who uses a rapier. I don't like saying it without the French accent, but I feel like a poser, and has a very large chip on his shoulder. He grew up in a noble family, but had no friends or loved ones. Growing up in a not-so-loving household, he became cold and detached, which made him a lot of enemies. However, his proficiency with his blade made him a valuable asset to the family. Unfortunately, one day he made some serious mistake that changed his life forever. We don't know what that mistake was, but all things considered, it was probably murdering somebody. He went on the run and was almost caught by guards, but a young girl named Amy drew the guards away. Amy claimed to have done this out of spite for the guards, but Raphael, having never experienced kindness in any form, was deeply affected by this and vowed to protect and care for Amy. The two traveled together and eventually, somehow, came into possession of a mansion. In the mansion library, Raphael found references to something called the Evil Seed, which he understood was connected to Soul Edge. Driven by his desire to enact revenge on those who had wronged him and to secure a stable future for Amy, Raphael set out to find and claim Soul Edge. His destined battle is with Nightmare, in which he accuses Nightmare of being too weak to handle the sword, which, love how ballsy a move this is, he doesn't even think twice about saying it. In Raphael's ending, he realizes how evil Soul Edge is, but vows to resist the corruption of the blade. He seems to have succeeded in his quest, however the rest of his ending alludes to him failing to resist the corruption and that a countless number of people die when he has the sword. I love Raphael's story. He's clearly a villain, but they actually gave him a reason to be the way he is and gave him some real motivation. Revenge on the family that treated him like shit and turned on him the second he put them in a compromising position is already motivation enough. But adding in the tragic element of latching onto Amy's supposed kindness because it's the only shred of it he's ever had, mwah. And the presumed conclusion of his story is so sad too, because in a desperate attempt to give Amy what he was never given, he will inevitably end up enacting the same horrible fate upon her because of Soul Edge. Raphael probably has the most depressing story out of any of the characters, and that's why I love it so much. Personally, I can't say the same about his playstyle. While I do love his style and having an evade and counter based moveset makes sense, I don't really enjoy playing that way. I also think the moveset itself is a bit limited. It's not unusable by any means, but I don't know, there could have been more to it. But I will say, the way he fights, like how his animations have this arrogant dance-like quality to them, is very in character, and I very much like that. I like Raphael's look. I maybe wish there was a little more to it, but at the same time, I feel like it conveys his ex-noble, on-the-run, I'm an arrogant bastard persona. And what luscious hair. Costume 2 I like a little bit more because it's a bit more flamboyant and thus stands out more. I'm kind of missing the blue from Costume 1 though, but it's still a very nice outfit. I also really like Costume 3. It feels like the outfit he would have worn before he was kicked out of the family. There's lots of blue, the scarf thing, the shorter hair. It's perfect when you think about it in that context. Each of Raphael's costumes seem to convey a different period of his story. Like Costume 3 is pre-exile, Costume 1 is on the run, and Costume 2 is maybe when he gets his footing again. This is storytelling through costume design. Very good. I appreciate the cohesion of the outfits. I don't know about the goatee on Costume 2 though. I have to shout out Raphael's English voice actor, Paul Jennings. He so perfectly brings out Raphael's arrogant, spiteful, flamboyant, insecure attitude in every line of dialogue.
Well then, let us...
The voice is absolutely amazing, so yeah. Thank you so much for this. Also iconic is this King's weapon demonstration, maybe the best in the entire game, maybe even franchise. Everything I just talked about is on full display in this performance. The history of the character, his personality, his skill, his style, the choreography, the camera work, dude, literally everything about this is incredible. And the music, oh my god. Yeah, sorry to everyone else, but Raphael has annihilated you in this department. So though I don't really play Raphael, I think the work put into his story and characterization is absolutely phenomenal. He's the last of the official new characters in this game, along with Talim, Cassandra, and Yunsung, and all of them are exceptionally well done. Raphael is a villain with real depth, and while I definitely wouldn't high-five him on the street or anything, I tell my friends that he's just misunderstood.
Versus Kilik.
Listen to the beat.
Kilik is a 23-year-old broad user whose true origins are unknown. He was raised in the Ling Shangsu Temple in the Ming Empire, China, and has no known family except for his eventual master, Edgemaster. One night at the temple, before Kilik was set to become the successive holder of one of the temple's sacred treasures, his weapon Kali Yuga, a mysterious light fell upon the temple and drove everyone who saw it into a murderous frenzy, including Kilik. Kilik, due to his skill, ended up killing many people, including his sister-like friend, Xianglin. He awoke to discover the Dvapara Yuga, Xianglin's sacred treasure, hung around his neck, which held back the darkness. He found himself in Edgemaster's home, who taught him about Soul Edge and trained him in the rod style. He then set out to destroy Soul Edge with the help of Xianghua, who he had met along the way. They were successful, but when he returned home, he discovered that Soul Edge had somehow managed to survive. He is now, once again, determined to destroy Soul Edge and atone for his sins. His destined battle is with Xianghua, where they both try to stop each other from facing Soul Edge due to the danger. Seems kinda counterintuitive considering you guys just did this together, but okay. In Kilik's ending, he channels all of Soul Edge's energy into Kali Yuga and then disappears to find a way to extinguish the evil. Kilik's story is pretty wild, which is cool, but at the same time, I don't think it realizes its full potential. There's a lot of interesting setup with his mysterious origins, his guilt over murdering his sister figure and others he cared about, his determination to protect Xianghua despite knowing her capabilities. There's actually actually a lot here, and you know I love a guilty character. I just wish they leaned a little more into it in his dialogue and ending. Clearly his feelings towards Xianghua are at least similar to his towards Xianglin, and his mysterious origin could have played some big role too, at least in conjunction with his rampage. It kind of feels like a lot of setup with no payoff. As a fighter though, I love Kilik. His style is so much fun. I love rod, staff, spear, etc. style weapons, and that combined with how accessible Kilik is makes him a must play. He's easy to react with, and as someone with a relatively slow reaction time, thank you very much. And the way he plays feels connected to his personality. It's very focused and disciplined, with the rare hint of maybe being a little unhinged. Kilik's look is okay, it's a little boring, but I like it well enough. The Dvapara Yuga around his neck adds a lot, I think, and I like the red. It feels appropriate for the kind of person he is. But that being said, there could have been more to it. I don't exactly know why he chose to be shirtless. Costume 2 is about equal in quality overall, but while this one has more striking colors, it also has a worse haircut. It makes him look way younger. I never picked this outfit, but it's not horrible. Two things about Kilik's voice. I go back and forth on how I feel about his dialogue being so cocky at times. On the one hand, I don't really see that for Kilik, but at the same time, he's still a young person, and there is that unhinged quality to him. Two, some of the delivery is so funny to me. Like during his Destined battle, he seems to forget Xianghua's name for a second, and by the time he says it, she's already talking over him.
You can't fight this with strength alone. Please understand. Xianghua.
I can't let you go any further.
Cracks me up every time. Okay, I know I just said Raphael beats everyone by a mile, and that is still true, but Kilik really gives him a run for his money here. Raphael wins in the personality department, but flipping the rod around everywhere and just all the choreography really threatens to surpass Raphael. It's so satisfying to look at, and it feels appropriately paced with its ebbs and flows. Great work that will be stolen for some reason. Kilik is a good guy with a tragic backstory, and I like that about him. He's very sympathetic and makes for a good hero character. I just wish his ending and dialogue incorporated that backstory in a more fulfilling way, but I guess you can't win them all. Very fun to play though, and that weapon demonstration is really top tier.
Versus Xianghua.
Kilik's partner in crime, Xianghua is the Scream Queen of Soul Calibur 2. She is a 20-year-old Chinese sword user from Ming Empire China with no living family and works as a member of the Royal Guard. She was sent to search for Soul Edge, but the party failed to locate the sword. In secret, Xianghua had destroyed Soul Edge after learning of its evil. The Emperor was not pleased with their failure, and thus she was demoted. Xianghua later learned that the Emperor had discovered a potential lead, and she was summoned due to her knowledge of Soul Edge. Xianghua thought she had destroyed the blade, but the rumors of its survival were in fact true. She vowed to finish what she started and is on the hunt once again. Xianghua's destined battle is with Kilik, as we just discussed, and in her ending she succeeds in destroying Soul Edge with the holy sword Soul Calibur and vows to never lie again. Xianghua's story is a little boring if I'm being honest, but it does a good job characterizing her as someone who will do the right thing despite the consequences. I didn't mention it in the recap, but her bio also mentions that she keeps her late mother's words in her head about carving your own path in life, and I like that. It shows how she looked up to her mother, and it provides an understanding of her mantra. Series of events wise though, I don't know where Soul Calibur came from. Fandom Soul Calibur page on Xianghua says her mother's sword, which is her weapon, is secretly Soul Calibur, and so that's where it came from, but Soul Calibur 2 makes no mention of that, so... Oh, I also like that in her bio it says that her father is dead according to her mother, which I'm sure doesn't mean anything considering her mother's characterization, but at the same time that's a very interesting detail to put in there. In any case, I like Xianghua's characterization, but the story itself could be beefed up a little. I enjoy playing Xianghua, but there's definitely a lot more to her playstyle than I'm willing to handle. I think she moves really well, and her attacks are all fun to pull off successfully. What I don't love is all the screaming. I don't know if this is like a distraction tactic or what, but please just lower the volume just a little. But I digress, her moveset is really complex and fun, and her style, personality, and story all come together very nicely. I do want to shout out Xianghua's weapons because I think basically all of them are beautiful. My favorite is the evil version of Soul Calibur. It's used on the box art in the opening movie and promo art, and I love the design. It's really satisfying to look at. Best looking weapon in the game for me, but every one of her weapons is pretty to look at. Xianghua's look is another iconic Soul Calibur 2 outfit. She looks great. The blue and white color scheme, the design, the hairstyle, all of it is gorgeous. I really like the crown she's wearing too. It really brings the look together, even if up close it looks a little like a birthday party crown. It's bright and bold and elegant, and that's her.
Just kidding.
Costume 2 is where we're showing a little bit more skin and having a cleavage cut out for some reason, but overall it's another good look. Again, the bold red color scheme and the asymmetrical leg warmer things she has on are really beautiful. Costume 3 is fun. I like how specific it feels. It's way more formal looking, and her wildly different hairstyle matches it perfectly, so good for Xianghua getting 3 solid outfits. Her weapon demonstration is solid. I don't have a lot of thoughts on it. As I'm writing this, it doesn't really stand out in my head. I would say it's just pretty middle of the road. Xianghua is a fun character. She's likable, fun to play, and is very relevant to the story of Soul Calibur. I don't know that I'll ever put in the time to really master her techniques, but I can appreciate that they're there.
Versus Maxi.
What? Can't get up?
Our first pirate. Maxi is a 28-year-old nunchaku user from the Ryukyu Kingdom in Shuri, present-day Okinawa, Japan. Maxi has lived a pretty carefree life on the seas with his crew until he met Kilik. Kilik had attracted the attention of monsters due to the evil living within him from the awakening of Soul Edge. The monsters killed Maxi's crew and he swore vengeance, traveling with Kilik and later Xianghua to find and destroy Soul Edge and the monsters. At Nightmare's residence, Maxi encountered the same monsters that killed his crew and defeated them. In response to his victory against Astaroth, the main monster, the god Ares made the earth swallow Maxi and he awoke on a riverbank, learning that his wounds would keep him from returning to that pirate life. Years later, he heard rumors of a man with a giant axe and concluded that it must be Astaroth. But he needed medicine and a local doctor treated him with a ritual using a rare metal fragment that was obviously Soul Edge. Maxi left the village in pursuit of Astaroth, but what he didn't realize was that the ritual had taken his memories of his fallen friends and left him with only the desire for revenge. Maxi's destined battle is of course with Astaroth, whom he calls a freak, and his ending sees him regaining his memories after confronting the darkness within himself and then returning to his friends to live a happy life. Maxi is okay. Personally, I don't find him all that intriguing. I sympathize with his loss and understand his desire for revenge, and I like that Soul Edge takes advantage of his bloodlust. It reinforces that theme of pain consuming you and evil taking advantage. I think my problem is that his story seems a bit lean overall, and his ending feels like a cop-out. Like what, he gets to have his revenge, but then also gets to live a happy life afterwards? I understand the idea of time lost being a consequence, but I don't know, I'm a little sadistic. I want his life to be shit now, you know? And then besides the revenge story and the fact that he had a crew, I don't know many other details about Maxi, like even his dynamic with his crew or with Kilik and Xianghua. What's here is a good start, but I need more. I don't like Maxi as a fighter, not because he's actually bad, I'm sure lots of people enjoy playing him, but I hate how most of his moves are combo strings and you have to wait so long for the animation to end before being able to block or do anything. It just frustrates me. Not a super fair take on his gameplay, this is definitely not an objective review, but I don't like it. It is cool having a nunchaku user in the game though. Maxi's look is decent for what it is. It's giving more sailor pirate than traditional pirate, which I actually think is good considering he's not the only pirate character. I like the blue and white, and his hair is pretty iconic. Very weird for the 16th century, but maybe that's actually accurate, I don't know. And those eyebrows. Jesus. I think because the style feels so modern compared to everyone else, I'm not as into it. Costume 2 is not bad. We get our California vibes Maxi with the blonde mullet and no hint of a shirt whatsoever. My favorite thing about the look is the pants. I like the bright design on the black backdrop. I think this look is a little more period appropriate, but it's not as much of a statement as Costume 1. It really feels like an obligation at this point to give your character a wildly different hairstyle and or color for their second outfit. This isn't fair, but I don't give a shit about his weapon demonstration either. It's actually fine, but like I said, I don't care about nunchucks, so this doesn't do anything for me, but he's going for it, so I guess that's commendable. Honestly, I just don't care about Maxi. I want to be fair to every character, but I can't love everyone. Bottom tier for me, but not objectively. I'm sure lots of people enjoy him. I'm just not one of those people.
Versus Yoshimitsu.
It is I.
Yoshimitsu. Yoshimitsu is an unknown who uses a katana of unknown origin. What is known is that his clan was massacred and Yoshimitsu was able to avenge them, but it took a toll. He lost an arm. Initially, he searched for Soul Edge in order to do this, but once he reached Europe, he heard about mass killings, which prompted him to follow that trail. Eventually, he ended up at Ostrheinsburg Castle, Nightmare's base of operations, but found nothing there. He felt a sinister energy emanating from his sword and sought to purge it, but someone soon stole the sword. Spoiler alert, it was Voldo, and Yoshimitsu went searching for it. Along the way, he devoted himself to helping people and doing his best Robin Hood impression, eventually finding the tomb where his sword had been kept. Here he also found a metal fragment that gave off the same energy. He now seeks to purge all this evil energy from the world. Yoshimitsu's destined battle is with Voldo, of course, and his ending sees him destroy Soul Edge and become a full-fledged Robin Hood with his new clan. I like Yoshimitsu. He's a sweetie, but also scary, but also adorable. Like Talim, he's primarily just a good guy trying to do good things. What really makes him stand out is his personality, and he is a lot of that. He's easily the most flamboyant character in the game, which is saying something. It's hard to draw any other conclusions about him though, since his profile contains so little information. I think for the most part this works though, since he has this crazy wild energy to him. I like the idea that you're forced to either make assumptions about where that comes from, or just take it completely at face value. It's actually kind of funny how all over the place his story is. Like, he keeps getting sidetracked by all these do-gooder side quests and never actually finds Soul Edge. I mean, he does in his ending, but you get what I mean. He's kind of this elusive myth, which is compounded by the fact that he's also a character in the Tekken games, which are in a completely different world from Soul Calibur. He's one of the few characters whose constant screaming will never break me. As a fighter, I have a lot of fun with Yoshimitsu. His style definitely matches his personality. He'll go diving right off the stage or even stabbing himself if you're not paying attention. I like how crazy he is. It's a good energy to include in this cast of characters. He feels very represented in his moveset, and despite his craziness, it's not that difficult to get the hang of him. Yoshimitsu's costumes are also great. Bet you didn't see that one coming. I love the bold design and the colors and the mask, and the mechanical arm is a cool story-relevant addition. I have no critiques. This is a bold costume for a bold character, and it looks great. Costume 2 is so wildly different from the first, and yet somehow it works just as well. I do wish the colors were bolder like costume 1, but the headpiece definitely makes up for it and then some. Yoshimitsu looks so good. I don't know what else to say. Okay, alright. Why is Yoshimitsu's weapon demonstration just a reskinned version of Mitsurugi's? Huh? Yoshimitsu deserves something legendary for his performance, and he gets literally nothing original? How dare you? I take back every positive thing I've said. Yoshimitsu is a king. Yoshimitsu may not be to everyone's taste, and I can understand that, but for me, he's the wackiest character in these games, and I would be absolutely livid if he was removed. However, give him his own weapon demonstration.
Versus Charade.
He said, "Let's get out of this town."
Charade is, I'm pretty sure, half pieces of Soul Edge, half rotting corpse of a man. The story in his profile is written like a tale and speaks of a man who wasn't notable or special in any way. No one cared about him until he started collecting pieces of Soul Edge, vowing to keep them safe. People found out that what he had was valuable, and bandits proceeded to kill him for it. When they disposed of his body, he was still clutching the fragments. Months later, the pieces had disappeared, and so had the body. All that was left were the trails of something. Charade's destined battle is with Cassandra, which isn't important, but they had to feature him somewhere, and Charade's ending sees him find Soul Edge and, like on instinct, meld with the sword, and the two become one. The new sword closes its eye and waits for its next wielder. So yeah, I'm pretty sure what's going on here is that this man is dead, but Soul Edge took his lifeless body and manifested it into a living version of Soul Edge fragments that would seek out its other half. So that's pretty wild and gross, but honestly kinda cool. There's not much to connect to except the sad story of this man who was murdered for nothing. And even with that, I wouldn't consider what Charade is now to be that man. It's just his body. But since Charade is just a mimic character and isn't meant to play a large role in the overarching story, I'm down for the weird body horror character. Charade is our playable mimic character for Soul Calibur 2. If you don't know what that is, each round he randomly selects one of the other character's movesets to use during the round. Inferno does this as well in his boss fights. And I think this works for Charade, especially when you consider that Inferno is also Soul Edge and it mimics fighting styles. It's in character is basically what I'm saying. I don't really have any feelings about what it's like to play him, obviously. I mean, it's a fun novelty, but in most cases you'll probably pick a specific style to play and for more than one round. I like that they didn't go too gross with the design. It's definitely body horror in concept, but the most grotesque thing about Charade is the pulsating eyeball that centers the body. Costume 1 is a red eyeball with warmer tinted body parts, and Costume 2 2 is a blue eyeball with cooler tinted body parts. I like both. Again, there's no character to relate it to, so it's just like, what design could be fun? I actually wish they had taken advantage of extra recolors for Charade, like with Link. Like, give me a green eyeball or a white eyeball. Let's get weird with it. Charade makes no sounds except for the heartbeat sound accompanying his eyeball, and to be honest, I actually appreciate it in this sea of constant characters screaming in pain or pleasure. And lastly, we have his weapon demonstration, but he doesn't have a weapon, you might be thinking. You're correct, he just flies around the stage, body parts trailing his eyeball, and then smashes them all onto the ground before calling them all back to him and posing. It's very weird, kinda cool, and I love the sound effects that go with the reattaching parts. Such a satisfying sound, I could die. So yeah, there's not much to Charade in comparison to the other characters, but I think that's okay. They understood that the Mimic character could be something different, and to be fair, they did still include something in his story. I may not use him all that much, but since there always seems to be a Mimic character, this one definitely works.
Versus Nightmare.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer?
Finally, we're here. Arguably the most iconic character of the Soul Calibur franchise, and definitely the most narratively relevant. It's the one and only Nightmare. Nightmare's host is a man named Siegfried. Siegfried sought out Soul Edge after the murder of his father. He eventually encountered the evil blade next to the dead body of a pirate who, in reaction to Siegfried's presence, reanimated, bursting into flames and attacking him. Siegfried defeated the creature and reached for Soul Edge. He heard the voice of Soul Edge revealing to him that if he used the sword to absorb souls, he could bring his father back. Siegfried took the bait, becoming the Azure Knight Nightmare in that moment. Many fell to Nightmare over the subsequent years, but his progress came to a screeching halt when a warrior wielding Soul Calibur, the complete opposite of Soul Edge, appeared and defeated him. This was Xianghua. Nightmare, or rather Siegfried, managed to survive and was able to regain some of his lost sanity. It was then he realized the atrocities he had committed and that it was, in fact, him who had killed his father. Deciding that Soul Edge must never fall into anyone's hands ever again, he attempted to isolate himself from humanity. However, Soul Edge merely took over his body while he slept, and thus the carnage continued. Years on, he has once again been completely consumed by Nightmare, seeking out the fragments of Soul Edge so that he may be fully restored. Nightmare's destined battle is against Raphael, who promptly clocks his weakness, and in his ending, he once again manages to regain his sanity, this time casting Soul Edge into a deep abyss so that none may ever again wield the blade. I love me a tragic backstory. I actually love this story for the series' main villain. Siegfried is such a sad character who was completely consumed by his pain and guilt, and Soul Edge took complete advantage of that. I like stories that focus on what makes a villain and the constant back and forth between resolve in your grief parade and realizing what you're doing is wrong. That's at least how I view Siegfried's story up to this point. Like, even after he was defeated the first time, he hadn't fully come to terms with his pain, thus he tried to still just isolate himself, but with Soul Edge as opposed to getting rid of it, like this ending alludes to. Soul Edge was able to take him back over because he never properly got over that past trauma, so in a sense he probably feels like he deserves this hellish existence like some sick punishment. But the guilt is still piling on because people are still dying because of him. At the end of the day, despite him clearly being in the wrong, Siegfried's story does a good job making you understand him and empathize with him, as opposed to someone like Cervantes. And again, I like the idea that Soul Edge takes advantage of your pain by removing the good memories of what you've lost and only leaving you with the grief. Nightmare's playstyle is pretty decent. I'm not a huge fan of all the stances, but it doesn't ruin the enjoyment by any means. The style makes you feel powerful, and actually the fact that he's a decently fast character despite the giant sword adds a lot to the image and understanding of just how powerful Nightmare is. He's not a character I'd choose to play super often, but gratefully it doesn't get frustrating for me like it does playing Maxi. I love Nightmare's looks. I think of each look as a progression of Siegfried's transition into Nightmare. Costume 1 is this sick looking armor with a beautiful helmet. I love the wings on the helmet. The malfested or infected, I don't know if I've explained what malfested means yet. It just infected by evil arm is very cool and again brings the look together and makes it something special. Also his long red hair. I'm not typically into the crazy long hair like that, but it absolutely works in this case. My favorite thing about this look though is that I always mistake the mouthpiece of the helmet for an open mouth, and it makes me suspicious of my own brain. Costume 2 is Nightmare with the bottom half of the armor on, but in lighter colors and less evil looking design. This is definitely the getting infected look. The crazy arm is in full force and you can see all the veins and stuff on his his body. We also get to see his natural long blonde locks. He looks like he could do a Pantene commercial. The only thing I don't like about this look is the eyeball above his nipple. It honestly just makes me really uncomfortable. Get away from me. Costume 3 is traditional Siegfried, not infected. He's got some classic knight armor on, no crazy arm, but he does still scream about wanting souls, which, you know, is cute. I like this outfit. I think the design works better in future games when Siegfried is his own character, but it's nice to see here, and it's a costume 3, so I'm okay with it. So yeah, pretty varied looks, and they each feel like they make sense in universe, which is not always the case in this game, so I enjoy that. Nightmare's weapon demonstration is fine. I don't mean that in a bad way, it's just another one of those middle of the road. It's sufficient, it does what it's meant to do. He's definitely showing off how strong he is, like he's literally swinging around that sword with one arm, but I guess I wish there was a little more to it. Nightmare is a good character. He's iconic for the franchise. I love how much work Project Soul has clearly put into the story of Siegfried and Nightmare. It adds so much depth to a character that could have easily just been an evil sword guy. He is the star of the show.
Versus Ivy.
You just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it.
Isabella Boob Queen Valentine, or Ivy, is a 32-year-old English snake sword user whose parents are deceased and is the secret daughter of the evil pirate himself, Cervantes. When her adoptive father was still alive, he was driven to madness by his search for Soul Edge, leaving their once distinguished family in shambles after his death. Her adoptive mother died soon after, and on her deathbed revealed to Ivy the truth about her parentage. Ivy fulfilled her father's wishes and continued to search for Soul Edge despite the toll it had taken on their family. But she soon discovered the truth of its evil and vowed to destroy the sword for what it had taken from her. Through the study of alchemy, she summoned a being who gave life to her snake sword. On her journey, she encountered Nightmare and agreed to help him, not realizing that this was the will of Soul Edge. She learned the truth the day Nightmare was defeated, along with the reveal that Cervantes, the original wielder of Soul Edge, is her biological father. She returned home feeling defeated and months later re-emerged with newfound resolve. Now she once again searches for Soul Edge with the goal of destroying it once and for all. Her destined battle is with Cervantes, which is appropriate, and out of all the destined battles, adds the most to her character journey. In her ending, she successfully destroys Soul Edge and exiles herself to live out the rest of her days with her beloved sword. I really like Ivy's story overall. It feels the most in line with the series' obsession with fate. Ivy is constantly fighting against her supposed fate, with her loving family being taken by Soul Edge, her father being a harbinger of it, and she herself even has Soul Edge in her blood. That's a detail that's not super clear in this game's profile, but I guess because Cervantes was the wielder of Soul Edge and had a child, Ivy now is literally biologically connected to the evil. Everything in her life is telling her to give up and give in, but she never does, and I think that's a big part of what makes her a beloved character. My problems with the way her story is written here is mostly that it barely alludes to certain things that seem like they'd have a much more obvious impact on her life in reality. The Soul Edge in her blood thing, and also this part about a being she summoned to give life to her sword, like, what is that all about? I'd like a little more explanation there. Overall though, Ivy's story is heartbreaking and moving and feels like it progresses in a believable way. I don't know how she couldn't see Nightmare was obviously evil, but I mean, whatever, it never said she was a genius. Ivy is so fun to play. She might be the most OP character in this game with the amount of strong close-up and far away options she has, plus she has really good speed. She takes a little getting used to with her stances and has some of the most difficult inputs in the game, but succeeding with Ivy feels so good. You feel so powerful, and combined with her "I'm gonna beat the shit out of you" attitude. Also, I want to shout out her weapon itself. I don't know if she has a whip-like weapon because she has a dominatrix design, or if she has that design because she has the snake sword, but either way, it's a fantastic style choice to include in the series. It's so unlike anything else, and it's the perfect mesh of the fantasy elements of the world and real-world weaponry. So now it's time to finally talk about Ivy's clothing. Setting aside the conversation about the purpose and effect of including such a sexualized character design, I'm just gonna say it, Ivy is the best designed character in the game. They clearly decided to lean into the powerful no-nonsense woman vibe and aesthetic of a dominatrix, and it works with every level of her character. Her story brings the drive to take control despite the world, her weapon brings the dominating, mysterious power, and her actual look is the connecting piece. Costume 1 is what I would consider a pretty standard dominatrix look. The dark colors, the design focusing on the chest, the strappy look, the gloves. The vombrace on her left arm is what 100% pulls this look together though, and makes it feel unique to Ivy as opposed to just dominatrix cosplay. I'm not sure what the story reason for it is, but it looks cool, and actually it's kind of reminiscent of Nightmare's Malfested arm. Not sure if that's on purpose, but it could make sense considering her Soul Edge connection. In any case, this look is absolutely stunning considering its dominatrix inspiration. It is very sexual, and it's understandable that people take issue with it. However, taking it at face value, there's a reason Ivy is such an icon. Costume 2 goes in a wildly different direction. You might have expected something equally as, if not more, racy, but instead they decided to let her backstory inform the design. Costume 2 gives that distinguished aura that her family once had. This is an outfit I could see Ivy having worn to formal things back in the day, and I really like the androgynous feeling of it. It's unique to Ivy and a very different take from the more traditionally feminine presentations of the other female characters. I particularly love the hairstyle. It's a rare example of them doing their alternate hairstyle for a character and having it turn out just as good as the original. I love that it embraces Ivy's masculine side and calls back to her history as a noble. And costume 3 is the perfect finisher. I don't know what you call this outfit specifically, but Ivy is sporting a half dress, half pantsuit ensemble in this beautiful red color, and it perfectly encapsulates the one side of Ivy we haven't seen yet, her softer side. We've seen powerful, sexy dominatrix Ivy, we've seen masculine, gorgeous, noble Ivy, and now we see relaxed, soft, feminine Ivy. Each of these outfits represents a different part of her personality, and that's exactly what you want your outfits to do. I love that even in the more feminine look for Ivy too, it's still not a traditional red dress because that wouldn't be true to her. She still leans more masculine in her presentation, and I love that that's represented here while still allowing her to be feminine. Like, I really can't gush enough about this choice. You literally never see this in media. Men and women are almost always forced to choose between masculine and feminine, but they didn't do that to Ivy. Was that a conscious choice? I don't know. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but either way, it's here. I'm gonna give them the credit, and I'm thankful for it. This is why I said Ivy is the best designed character in the game. Everything about her, her story, her weapon, her clothes, all work in harmony to create a character who feels well-rounded and specific. So yes, many people probably know her just for the fact that she's an incredibly sexualized character, and her personality and weapon clearly paint her as a sexy dominatrix type, which may or may not just be to titillate male fans, but I think Ivy deserves more attention than that, and I think a lot of people agree with me, which is why I think she's a fan favorite. And just so I don't lose this momentum, Ivy's weapon demonstration is really good. It feels dynamic and appropriate, and I really enjoy that the sword starts as just a hilt and then switches into the snake. So cool. So yeah, Ivy is an icon, and for good reason. I completely understand the argument that she contributes to the issue of over-sexualizing women in video games, and honestly, I think she does too. But I think the good and the bad can coexist, and in the case of Ivy, there's so much more to her than meets the eye, even if what meets the eye is a lot.
Versus Cervantes.
You are a
Pirate Daddy. Cervantes is a Spanish pirate who casually stopped aging at 48 and is the biological daddy of Ivy. I'm gonna stop saying that. He is actually the original wielder of Soul Edge in this series, and it's the reason he stopped aging at 48. His parents are dead, and he killed his entire crew to feed on their souls. What a guy. Eventually, he was defeated by Sophitia, and his entire body was consumed by hellfire. However, he did not die, and the pieces of Soul Edge living in his body resurrected him. It took a minute for his memories to return, but once they did, he remembered how big of a dick he is, and started to search for Soul Edge again, despite knowing it took away his free will. With pieces of Soul Edge in his possession, he fed on strong souls to empower Soul Edge, and that's what you missed on Glee. Cervantes' destined battle is with Ivy, as we know, and he treats her like any other soul conquest, further solidifying just how much of a piece of shit he is, and in his ending he gets Soul Edge, and basically now the world is hell. Cervantes is obviously the pure evil character, absolutely no redeeming qualities, just reveling in his bad boy persona. I'm okay with this. I mean, I have no investment in him because what is there to like, but I think a game like this needs at least one character who only exists to cause chaos, the messy bitch character, if you will. I'm curious about how he may have felt when his parents died, or if it was maybe him who killed them. It does say his father died in battle, and if we're really leaning into that, then maybe his attitude of power over everything comes from his father. Who knows? And I really don't want to know the circumstances of how he got someone to have a child with him. I'm not exactly getting loving, consensual vibes from this guy. Cervantes is just here to be evil and a pirate, and that's fine. Keep doing what you're doing. Cervantes is decently fun to play. He's very mobile, and having a gun sword is kind of a fun novelty. Out of the 20-something characters in this game, though, Cervantes is more of a random pick. His look is very clearly undead pirate, and it's much more traditional pirate than Maxi's look. While they did understand the assignment, I don't really care for the traditional pirate look that much. If it was a little more rock star like Jack Sparrow, then that would be different. I also wish the colors were more saturated. His second costume is a little better. It's still a little underwhelming with its colors, and admittedly the silhouette isn't as interesting, but I like the way the hair looks and the general vibe of it. I would say 1 and 2 are pretty equal in quality though. Maybe I'm just biased because I don't really care about Cervantes. I think his best quality is his voice.
Your soul makes a poor meal.
Warren Rogerson does the English voice in this game, and he really brings this character to life. The gravel in his voice, the campy delivery of the dialogue, it absolutely improves a character that I wouldn't otherwise pay much attention to, and his writing is really fun. Appropriately horrible monster. I also don't like his weapon demonstration. Not to completely pile on this character, it's just boring. Cervantes can literally teleport and fly around, but there's none of that here. The only exciting part is when he shoots a bullet into the air at the end. And also the camera work is doing too much. Please sit down. Yeah, so Cervantes is just not for me. I get the concept, and I think it's good to have a pure evil character in a fighting game, but I don't really care about pirates, and I wish he felt as iconic as he should. He's literally the original villain of the series, and yet I've literally forgotten he's on the roster in the past. Sorry, Pirate Daddy. Praying for you.
Versus Sophitia.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Sophitia Alexandra. This is like the it girl story-wise of the franchise. Sophitia is a 25-year-old sword and shield user from Athens and is the older sister of Cassandra. Sophitia has a lot of history from the previous 2 games. Essentially, she was called upon by the god Hephaestus when she was younger and tasked with finding and destroying Soul Edge. The first journey saw her come face to face with Cervantes, and she managed to destroy one of the 2 Soul Edge blades. However, the shrapnel from the blow lodged into her body, and she was saved by Taki, who defeated Cervantes. A few years later, she learned that Soul Edge was still alive, and she journeyed once again to find it. However, it was destroyed by Kilik and Xianghua that time before she could find it, so she returned home. During this time, she married a man named Rothion, and they had 2 kids, Pyrrha and Patroclus. All was well until Sophitia's children came into the possession of a fragment of Soul Edge, which they fought over violently. Sophitia knew, once again, that Soul Edge was out there and needed to be destroyed. However, as we learned in Cassandra's story, her sister took the holy sword and shield and ventured out first so that Sophitia would not be forced into this dangerous situation again. Sophitia decided, however, that she could not sit idly by while Cassandra risked her life, and she went after her and Soul Edge once again. Sophitia's destined battle is with Cassandra as she finally catches up to her and pleads with her to return home so that she may be safe. Her ending sees her destroy Soul Edge, and finally she is able to rest knowing that her family is safe. While I may prefer her sister's spunkier attitude, Sophitia is a really inspiring character who keeps getting back up after being knocked down, and now, in this game, brings this maternal energy to protecting her family at any cost. I don't really have much else to add to that. Her story is strong, and you can really sympathize with her situation. I think this whole history and dynamic with her and Cassandra is some of the best story material in the game. Sophitia is one of the most relevant characters in this overall story, and her family is the heart and soul. As a fighter, she plays a lot like Cassandra, or I guess Cassandra plays a lot like her, with a more graceful and slowed down approach. I think they 90% got differentiating her and her sister's playstyles. I definitely look forward to the future though, when they feel like distinct characters from each other. Her range is really good, and the shield hit sound effects are good. She's very accessible. If she wasn't an unlockable character, I would say she'd be good for newcomers. Sophitia's costumes are something. I like costume 1. When I think of Sophitia, this is pretty much the vibe I imagine. It's very feminine and ancient Greece looking, and the color scheme and detailing, mostly on the skirt, is nice. And I like the braided hair, but also it's just all a bit plain. There's not really any armor to liven it up. The blue and white color scheme has been done better by other characters, and her skirt is constantly flying up, which just looks bad. Costume 2 is pretty in theory, but not in execution. I like the idea of the hair, headband, and breastplate, but it all looks like it's just thrown together, and Costume 3 is the worst because it looks like something I could make in a character creator. It's just bland, brown, and white, and it's unacceptable. Again, they're taking advantage of dyeing a character's hair a new color, but honestly, this style does not look good on Sophitia. She's very much a blonde. I like her vocal performance, but I will say Sophitia is one of those characters where the screaming gets a little much. It crosses the line a little bit into nails on a chalkboard. Her weapon demonstration is okay. It's nothing special. The first half is strong, but the ending is kind of anticlimactic. Sophitia is an icon, and I like her. I think my problems mostly just stem from this iteration of her from a gameplay perspective. Her story is great, and this chapter of her story is kind of the most important so far. And I love her dynamic with Cassandra, but as a character, I think she deserves more main character treatment as opposed to the unlockable character that she is in this game.
Versus Astaroth.
I will crush you. Shut up and die. Your place some great disappointment. Amuse me again.
Astaroth is a giant axe-wielding monster and is technically the youngest character in the game at 7 years old. Astaroth was summoned by Fecal Sestimus, an evil cult basically, and is a servant of the god Ares. Astaroth was created by the cult when Ares instructed them to bring him Soul Edge. When Astaroth found it, however, it was in a weakened state, and he concluded that Ares would not be pleased with the pathetic version of the sword. So he agreed to work with Nightmare to feed souls to Soul Edge and planned to steal it from him once the sword had recovered. Astaroth's plan was interrupted by Maxi, however, who was enacting revenge for his crew. 4 years later, he was resurrected and had absorbed fragments of Soul Edge, which made him even more powerful than before. He soon remembered his purpose and set out on his mission once again. His destined battle is against Maxi, whom he does not remember, and his ending sees him sacrifice himself to empower Soul Edge for Ares, turning him into Ares' ultimate weapon for the rest of time. Happily ever after, for sure. So Astaroth doesn't really have much in terms of personal goals or personality of his own. Everything about him revolves around his created purpose, and so his personality and story are essentially just, I want to kill everyone, lol. I'm kind of fine with that though. Maybe I'm projecting, but in a twisted way there's something kind of charming about him. Like, I wouldn't want him to slay me, but he's basically another pure evil character, but I guess I feel for him more because he was created with the intention of being evil, as opposed to like Cervantes, who is just an asshole. Anyway, I don't have thoughts on his story. He's just a bloodthirsty monster at the end of the day, but also for some reason I feel like we should protect him. I have a lot of fun playing Astaroth. He's slower than I usually like, but he's very powerful and has great range, and I think a giant axe as a weapon is super cool, so that's a huge plus. I'm still trying to get the hang of his focus on grabs, but I'm sure we'll get there. Oh, he also has the best Soul Edge weapon in the game. I love the giant eye and the disgusting goriness of it. I imagine Astaroth is a fun character for artists to work on because he can essentially look like anything as long as it's big and mean looking. This comes through in his costumes, with each of them looking drastically different from one another. Costume 1 is, I think, a golem look. I don't know what mythological creature I'm thinking of, but he's that. He looks like he's on steroids. That's to be expected. The heart on the outside of his chest is a nice, if questionable, touch. I think more clothes would probably help you though, Astaroth. Costume 2 is clearly based on something I can't recall right now, but it's much more vibrant and has a really interesting silhouette, mostly because of the hat. It's a little more of a cartoonish look, but if anyone can pull it off, it's Astaroth. Again, with the no top though. I guess we're meant to assume his skin is super dense and or that he's trying to smash. Costume 3 is a Mad Max-esque executioner look, and it's my favorite out of the three. I love the hood with the built-in mohawk, and the nails in his body are actually so sick. I don't have a lot to say about these costumes just because there's not really any character traits to link them back to, but Astaroth is an executioner and all three costumes give that vibe, so success! And his weapon demonstration is everything. It's not Raphael level, but I think it's so cute watching this monster perform this like choreographed routine with his giant axe. You can tell he's trying his best, and the ending where he almost loses his balance is the best part. Astaroth is great. There may not be a lot to him as a character, but for what he is, I think they got it absolutely right. He's fun to play, he's bloodthirsty but charming, he's a beefcake. No, wait, he uses a giant axe. What more could you ask for?
Versus Voldo.
Don't look at me like that.
Oh, Jesus. Voldo is a 50-year-old guitars user from Italy whose parents and 4 brothers have died and has devoted his life to serving his also long dead master, Verci. Also known as the Merchant of Death, Verci sought Soul Edge like everyone else. During the war, he lost most of his fortune, and so he dug a pit to house the still coveted treasures he had left. This place became known as the Money Pit, and Voldo was its guardian. Verci died before he could find Soul Edge, but Voldo's devotion persisted, and he continued to protect the fortune and search for Soul Edge. One day, after chasing away an intruder, he heard his master's voice inform him that following the aura emanating from the female intruder's sword would lead him to Soul Edge. I don't know who this intruder is, but they specify that she's female, and the only person I can think of with an aura like that would be Taki. Anyway, he found a sword with the same aura and brought it back to the pit, but got no response from the voice. This was Yoshimitsu's sword, by the way. After some time, he discovered metal shards that had the same aura as Soul Edge, and he realized that he had taken the wrong weapon. Now Voldo searches for Soul Edge once again. His destined battle is with Yoshimitsu because he stole his weapon, and his ending sees him bring Soul Edge back to Verci and is rewarded with his voice once again. And he continues to protect Verci's tomb and legacy for the remainder of his days. You know, for a character as weird as Voldo is, I actually think he's one of the more sympathetic and interesting people. It's very interesting that following the death of his family, he would turn to complete devotion to this rich guy who kind of gives off bad vibes, and as far as we know, it's of his own free will, so it's clearly fulfilling something for him. Is it a sense of belonging? Purpose? Is it a sex thing? I also like the ambiguity surrounding the voice Voldo hears. Is it Voldo manifesting his master's voice due to isolation and loneliness? Or is it Soul Edge doing its manipulation thing, searching for a new host? Either way it works, and either way it's sad. Voldo is seen by many in-universe as this monster or myth, but at the end of the day, he's just a man clinging to his only sense of stability in the world. Big relatable energy. So I have mixed feelings about Voldo's fighting style. It's really unique and cool, and it sort of feels like he's dancing, but to actually play it, not for me. Remembering how to approach when facing backwards and or in a handstand stance is just too much for my feeble brain. Again, I do think it's a cool inclusion, but it's too weird and too complicated. I do want to shout out literally having guillotine blades available as weapons though. That's hot. For Voldo's look, they're clearly leaning into the submissive, potentially sex slave angle, which is so wild. But that being said, it definitely helps him stand out. I hate costume 1 though. I think it's so ugly. It's the most obviously like, oh yeah, blindfolded and ball gagged, BDSM vibes. But I think they could have pulled this off in a much more appealing way, which is what they did with costume 2 and 3. Like, it literally looks like they just wrapped him in like tape or gauze or something. Ugh. Costume 2 is much better and gives almost jester performer vibes with the gloves and the poofy red one piece. I absolutely love the mask, and the jock guard used to bother me when I was a kid, but now I think it completes the look. This costume is great. Honestly, should have been costume 1. Costume 3 is the most iconic though. This is like real dungeon-based. I am living for this outfit and its punk spikes and alien looking metal helmet. This look is iconic and is still to this date one of Voldo's best costumes. Oh, and if there was any doubt that Voldo's design is based around like filthy dirty sex slave inspiration, his voice is literally just breaths, grunts, and moans like he doesn't have a tongue or something. It's a lot. They really went wild with this character. His weapon demonstration isn't my favorite, but I feel like it pairs really well with him. It looks like he put a lot of work into it and is genuinely trying to impress, and I love that. I think that's cute. He really did that, and it's probably the only time I will ever call Voldo cute. I'm really curious to see where they might take Voldo in the future. They don't tell you much, but Voldo's story seems anchored in pain and being consumed by it, which I suppose is appropriate in universe. But instead of turning to evil, he continues to earnestly try and honor someone's legacy and feel like he has a purpose in a horrible, deadly world. They really did go and make Voldo a sex slave though, and I have so many questions about that creative process.
Versus Seung Mina.
I hate saying this because then everyone on Twitter is like, you're lying, I hate you. I was supposed to be in the video.
Our last main roster character is Miss Seung Mina, a 23-year-old Korean Zanbatu user whose family died from illness except for her father, the leader of the Seung Dojo. Mina trained to be a warrior from a young age and strived to become one of the best. As an adult, a man named Hwang, whom she was close with, was recruited to search for Soul Edge, or as they knew it, the Sword of Salvation. When Mina found out, she disobeyed her father and struck out on her own to search for Soul Edge, only to be dragged back by Hwang. As a consequence, she was forced to retake all of her training. One day, Yunsung, one of the students of the dojo and friend of Mina's, left with White Storm, a family heirloom she had lent him. She felt obligated to bring it back and convinced her father to let her go despite his concerns. He quickly realized she would probably also use this as an excuse to continue her search for Soul Edge, but by this point she had already left the country. As of now, she is on said quest. Her destined battle is with Yunsung, whom she doesn't think is skilled enough to take on such a challenge. In her ending, she destroys Soul Edge after realizing it's evil and returns home with Yunsung, happy with her success. Seung Mina is cute, and I appreciate how similar she and Yunsung are. They have similar goals and attitudes about proving themselves, but Mina is a little more clever, and with their bickering, they very much give off brother-sister vibes. It's good that they let them be equals, but also allow her to be more of a teacher, as she is the older sister, if that makes sense. Mina's story feels like a very classic overprotective parent won't allow their child to do something, and the child is forced to prove to the parent that they're capable, and I like that in this case I don't read it as sexism. While it's definitely a possibility, I see this as a response to losing everyone else in his family. He can't risk losing her too. But also, Mina is an adult and has to be allowed to make her own decisions. It's a very humble and relatable story in comparison to most of the other characters. I'd like to see this father-daughter dynamic play out even more in the future, and in a perfect world, see how that dynamic is affected by Yunsung and Hwang. Spoiler alert for myself though, that does not happen. I love playing as Seung Mina. Her playstyle is derivative of Kilik's for some reason, but I also like playing as Kilik, and I love the long weapons, and every single one of her weapons is pretty except for Soul Edge, but that's always ugly. I do really look forward to her having a more unique, distinct moveset though. Just because she has a long weapon like Kilik's doesn't mean that they would fight the same way. Alright, so let's get into these costumes. Seung Mina is the worst example of just showing skin for no reason in my opinion. In costume 1 specifically, the hair is beautiful, I absolutely love it, and the color of the outfit is nice and vibrant, but she's basically just wearing a two-piece bikini, and I'm not seeing any creativity or how that relates to her. At least for the other half-naked women, there's some clear connection to a character trait or a design theme, but Seung Mina's design feels like they just didn't know what to do with her. Costume 2 has worse hair, and admittedly I'm still not really a fan of the outfit. However, at least this costume has a clearer concept. It feels like they're actually trying to convey something. Same with costume 3, honestly. This outfit clips a lot because it's so poofy and the skirt is kind of a monster, but again, I 100% see what they were going for with this look, and it's actually more memorable and distinct because of that. I don't really love any of Mina's outfits, but I think 2 and 3 work better because they actually have a point. Stick with costume 1's hair though. Short hair is not the vibe for Mina. I also want to talk about her voice for a second. It's not bad, but I don't think it's animated enough for the character or the game. It's more of an issue with her dialogue, but I can barely hear her speak half the time.
Looks like we'll have to settle this the hard way.
I think the overall vibe needs to be a little livelier for Mina than low-key, closer to Yunsung's in attitude and volume. Her weapon demonstration is Kilik's, which I have less of a problem with than Yoshimitsu, because Kilik has a good demonstration, but as I said for that character, please give Mina her own weapon demonstration. She shouldn't feel like a clone character when she was literally here first. I really like Seung Mina. I like her story, her personality, her gameplay, her weapon. The framework is all there for a really standout character, but she feels like a last-minute addition to the game when it comes to execution, and that sucks. For a character who's been around since the very first game, I would have expected more.
I think you need a bit more practice.
Finally, we have reached the end of the main roster, but we're not done yet, folks. This game also has 3 bonus characters, and I say bonus characters because they all have derivative movesets, color swaps of only 2 outfits, no backstories, and not even a move list. They seem to have been made specifically for Weapon Master as like ruffian characters, so yeah, bear that in mind as we go forward. There's not much to them, but I guess it's still nice to have them. First up is a lizard.
Versus Lizardman.
Lizardman's moveset is a mix of Cassandra's and Sophitia's with a couple unique moves thrown in there. He feels pretty clunky to play, but he has good movement speed and is easily the most memorable of the 3 bonus characters. As I said, each of them have 6 costumes, with 3 through 6 being palette swaps of 1 and 2. Costume 1 is better than 2, but they're both pretty close in quality. Costume 2 looks more like a dinosaur, though I guess you could say that for costume 1. Out of the costume 1 colors, I would say 5 is the best because I like the red and yellow together. The first is too bright of a yellow, and the third is too bright of a blue. Out of the costume 2 colors, I like 4 the most. I guess I like red on Lizardman. 2 is too boring, and 6 is just No. Lizardman's voice is growling. I can't really comment on that, but you know, it's good growling, I guess. Lizardman is Lizardman, and while I said he is the most memorable of the bonus characters, he is my least favorite to play because of his moveset. It's like if you made Cassandra and Sophitia boring and hard to play, and I will never forgive you for that, so better luck next time.
Versus Assassin.
Assassin's moveset is based on Yunsung's primarily, with a bit of Mitsurugi and Xianghua to spice things up. I want to say he's the most OP of the bonus characters, but that could just be my experience. It feels like his damage output is higher than most characters, on top of being extremely easy to play. He's actually decently fun, and I remember him being my favorite bonus character as a kid. I like his costume 1 design a lot. It's simple armor, but the head wrap makes him stand out in a really good way. No, it doesn't measure up to main roster standards, but neither does Seung Mina, so costume 1's best color is 3 because purple is such a pretty color, but 1 is also really good. It looks very classic. 5 is the lowest because it looks washed out. Costume 2 is decent. I appreciate the attempt with the mask, but the head wrap is better. Costume 2's best color is its default because it feels cohesive, then 6 because it's a bit off, then 4 because the yellowish metal mask is just ugh. Assassin's voice is so funny to me. I love that he's dramatically laughing all the time. Somehow it never gets annoying. So I'm gonna agree with my younger self and say that Assassin is the best bonus character. He's the most fun to play, has the best look, and has a lot of character that comes through in his voice. Very nice job.
Versus
Does anyone else find it really hard to spell Berserker? Berserker is, I think, a man in full body armor whose moveset is based on Astaroth's and maybe also uses Rock's moveset, character from the last game. Berserker feels a bit faster than Astaroth, but his hits don't stun the way Astaroth's do, so he can't combo very well. He's much more enjoyable than Lizardman is to play, but I probably still wouldn't seek him out like I would Assassin. He's okay. I like the Viking vibe and the ancient statue vibe in his respective outfits. They're the least memorable compared to Lizardman and Assassin, but again, not bad. Costume 1's best color is 3 because apparently I really like red. Next is 1 because it looks like the traditional color, and then 5 because the yellow is a bit too much. Costume 2's best color is 4 because it's giving desert vibes, which I like. Then 2 because again it looks traditional, and then 6 because it looks mismatched and ugly. Berserker's voice is also kind of funny to me. He sounds like a giant brute, but in like a big dope way. He's always trying to be very intimidating, but it never works. It's cute. Berserker is okay. Out of the 3 bonus characters, he's definitely the most forgettable, but I would rather play him than Lizardman. And at the end of the day, I'd rather play Astaroth, so he's just kind of there. Oh well. And those are all the playable characters. Congratulations if you made it to the end of this section. I know that was a lot. I do have one more character to talk about though. He's not playable without hacks, but he is integral to the story and many of the modes, that character being Inferno. Inferno is the boss character of the game, and what an absolute icon. I had to look up what he is because the game doesn't tell you, but essentially he's Soul Edge manifested as a fighter. He's a mimic character who swaps styles 3 times in a match, which is cool, but also means there's no moveset to talk about. What we do know is that he's a flaming evil monster with the sole goal of conquering the world, and frankly, I think that makes him not only an icon, but a gay icon. His design is awesome, and it feels appropriately epic when fighting him. We absolutely love Inferno, and we have no choice but to stand. And that's the last character. Ooh, thank fucking God. In all seriousness though, I appreciate all the work that went into creating every single one of these characters. Fighting games by nature are not necessarily obligated to dive deep into character drama or anything like that, but doing it adds so much to the experience of the character and allows so much more opportunity to get invested. And at the end of the day, that's what makes your characters and your world special. Characters who, while they exist in a larger than life world in larger than life circumstances, are just people, or undead berserker monsters. As with any fighting game though, what are good characters without stages to fight on? Eurydice Shrine Gallery is Cassandra and Sophitia's stage and is the shrine to the god Hephaestus, built on a mountain with a giant statue as its focal point. The story is that it was built up in the snow-covered mountains by Olympian gods, according to legend. Allegedly, Hephaestus built the main shrine on top of the summit with steps too large for mortals to climb. Humans built this shrine around the steps, and in one corner is where the offering of the holy sword and shield was made, the weapons used by Sophitia and later Cassandra. When you play on the stage, the weapons are missing and the stage description is like someone took them. Yeah, it was Cassandra. I already spoiled that. This stage is beautiful. Lavish architecture and sprawling scenery are notable qualities of this stage. The statue, windows and pillars, water on the steps, even the flooring are all immaculate and really add to the feeling of grandeur this stage is meant to evoke. It has the same vibes as a cathedral but in the sky, and I love that. The shape of the stage is also super unique. It's shaped like a J, which no other stage is like that in this game. I really appreciate the weird shape because it switches up gameplay a lot. Combined with the size of the stage, no match will ever play out the same way. The song playing on this stage is called Unwavering Resolve, and it's easily one of the best in the game. It's so grand and adventurous and absolutely feels like a song that should be called Unwavering Resolve. The horns and the strings give you this feeling of impending victory and good guyness, and the flute section is the perfect break from the booming, triumphant feeling of the other instruments. It feels super emblematic of Olympian gods, but especially Cassandra and Sophitia. This song complements the stage and its associated characters so well and makes it one of the more memorable stages in the game. Eurydice Shrine Gallery is a beautiful stage that perfectly encapsulates the holy warriors it represents. It's so rich and aesthetic, and it switches up gameplay in a notable but not too distracting way. This is easily one of my favorites in this game and sets a high bar for the rest of the stages. And seriously, I cannot get over how good it looks for a GameCube game. The story of Kaminoi Castle is that of a fortress built on a desolate mountain once meant to act as the capital in this region of Japan. However, it was eventually abandoned during the unification of Japan due to its hostile location. Despite this, the castle stayed in remarkable condition and rumors began to spread of spirits haunting the grounds. This stage is most associated with Taki, though the exact connection is not clear. My favorable guess is that it's a location that the Fuma clan uses or is somewhere Taki has been hiding out. I don't mind the lack of connection though. In this case, the stage is gorgeous, so it's fine. The architecture here is legitimately one of my favorite styles. The stone wall, the roofing, the colors, all of it is so pretty, and the cherry blossoms, besides also being pretty, really bring the look of the stage together. I love the torches too that light up the stage with the moon and that you can hear them crackling. The layout is a square with walls on 2.5 sides, and some of it is actually collidable. I like in the future where all the walls are collidable, but you know, this is a good start. I'm sure this has something to do with the technological limits at the time. I digress. I like the layout. It's dynamic yet simple and gives you options for your approach. The music is definitely worth highlighting though. Brave Sword, Braver Soul is an incredible piece of music and frankly is iconic. I don't know how composers do it, but it just perfectly encapsulates the history of this stage, its mysterious current circumstances, and its literal application as a fighting game stage. Kaminoi Castle is a beautiful stage with stunning design and atmosphere and one of the best pieces of music I've ever heard in a video game. Despite this, it's actually one of my less selected stages. Full disclosure, I've been learning recently that I tend to like maps and stages that are fully lit in the daytime more often, and since Kaminoi Castle has a sunrise sunset kind of aesthetic, I don't gravitate towards it as much. It's still really beautiful though. I swear I'm not a hater. The Palgaea Shrine is the headquarters of Fegal Sestimus, a cult that worships Ares and created Astaroth. The building practices of this cult have been to always build a new temple on top of the old one, which doesn't seem safe, but go off, and thus the lowest level has been forgotten about until its entrance was recently uncovered. This level revealed a shrine to the god of rebirth, and the cult has been studying here in hopes of gaining the power of rebirth. What really sells this stage is the statue and the green lake. The green is such a striking look paired with the grand figure, and it really successfully gives that unnatural feeling. The statue being partly submerged makes it cooler too. I wish there was a little more going on though, maybe like a little altar and or wall or something. The music is decent, but I think they could have gone harder. The song is called Evil Reborn, but it doesn't quite give that. Like, I want to feel like I'm witnessing a monster rising out of a lake. Not that much to say about Palgaea Shrine. It's pretty cool, and I like that it's directly related to Astaroth's story, but it's not a first choice stage for me. Here we fucking go. South France Mansion Library is Raphael's stage and whose previous owner died of poisoning. You know, for a character I don't really like playing that much, Raphael is absolutely killing it in this game. Literally, Raphael killed this man.
Die.
Now the mansion sits in silence except for where Amy and the servants reside. This is the best stage. Easily, hands down, easily the most visually appealing stage in the whole game. The sprawling scale, ornate decor, intricate detailing, even the tiny windows on either side have actual views within them. I'm legitimately in awe of how iconic this stage is. It feels like a real place that could exist. It feels like when old mansions get opened up like museums and you can view all the history within them and feel the aura of the upper class nonsense. Absolutely exceptional. The stage itself is basically an oval with one open side for ring outs. The size is perfect. The wall hit and ring out potential is all there, but it's also big enough that you're not constantly bumping into things. This is also a top 5 song in this game. The song is called No Turning Back and it slaps so fucking hard. It's grand and poetic and dangerous and sexy and I love the Eastern European vibe. It fits the stage really well and matches Raphael's chaotic, sad, optimistic, evil so flawlessly. This song is incredible, guys. All the other stage music wishes it was her. So I know I haven't been super clear on my feelings about this stage, but let's just say I would have a child with this stage if I could. Iconic. The design is perfect, the music is perfect, and I love how the stage is a representation of Raphael, not only in personality, but in where he's at personally in the story. This mansion embodies his bloodlust, but also his desire to give Amy the life he never had, while going about it the only way he knows how. Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before. I'm pregnant. Imperial capital Ayutthaya is an imperial villa in what is present-day Thailand and is used to entertain guests of the dynasty. It's designed to be as pretty and nature-highlighting as possible, and yeah, I'm definitely getting that vibe. The description says both Talim and Yunsung pass through here on the way to India within days of each other, which explains why they cross paths in their destined battles. Since Talim has her own stage, I would say this is basically Yunsung's stage, though like Taki, it doesn't have any clear connection to him besides passing through. This stage is very pretty. I definitely see the Thai influence on the architecture, though this specific style doesn't interest me as much. It's very opulent and accomplishes what it set out to do, but I'm just not that into it. I know I said I love daytime stages, and that still stands, but this one just doesn't do it for me. Honestly, I think it comes down to the style. Like, objectively, it's well done, but I don't care. Ayutthaya's song is called Destiny Awaits No One, and I think it's cute. I think it ranks higher than something like Evil Reborn, but it's still not one of my favorites. I will say though, I think it pairs really well with Yunsung's vibe. It feels very determined and optimistic, but maybe a little naive, I guess. I like it. I consider the stage a solid B tier. It's not bad, but it quickly becomes forgettable in the face of the many other great stages in this game. It's very pretty and technically well done, but it's a pass for me. Pirates. Pirates Alcove is a dock hidden inside a cave in the westerly seas. People avoid it because it's hard to access and it has a dark history as the place where Cervantes operated and murdered his crew. 10 years have passed since anyone has entered the cave, and yet the place is still lit and houses a pirate ship. One can only wonder if this is real or a projection from some astral being. So obviously this is Cervantes' stage, but it's also Maxi's stage because, you know, pirates. Here's what I'll say. This stage is not ugly and is well done for what it is. Its best feature is the sharks clearly swimming around in the water. I just don't give a shit about pirates.
Shut up!
It's just not my thing, and so I can't really be objective about it. Not that anything I've said is really objective at this point. It's a no for me, but I imagine a yes for a lot of other people. The song, Eternal Struggle, is also okay. Again, I'm having a really hard time being objective. I think it's good. It's probably good. I don't have anything else to say about Pirates Alcove. It's not for me, but I'm not gonna sit here and say it's trash because I don't think it is. I'm just not here for the booty. Xiwei Siege Ruins is Xianghua and Mitsurugi's stage and is located near the border of the Ming Empire. It was once a stronghold that has now been destroyed after the Emperor, suspicious that the castle had hidden Soul Edge, sent an army to seize it. The army failed to find the sword, and the question still remains as to whether or not the castle ever had the sword. This is Xianghua's stage because she is from the Ming Empire, and Mitsurugi's stage because he was visiting the castle just prior to the siege. This stage is beautiful and a great concept for a stage, but I never pick it. Again, it's just not my vibe. Out of the stages I'm not into though, I would say this is probably the best one for having a fun, specifically Soul Edge related concept and having it really come through in the tone. I really like the song though. This song is called Hubris and it's actually one of the songs I bought to use in Soul Calibur 5. It's a really beautiful, sorrowful tune with an Aru as the leading instrument, which adds so much to the expressiveness and the pain of the story. This is one of the best soundtrack songs in any Soul Calibur game, and it really helps to elevate a stage that I might have otherwise forgotten about. That being said, I still don't really pick this stage. It's gorgeous and I love the song, but I guess it's just not the vibe I'm going for when I play the game. But rest easy knowing that this is absolutely at the top of the stages I don't play tier, and that's a compliment. Egyptian Ruins is an unknown underground ruin that was only recently rediscovered after someone ripped open the seal to the entrance. Now the artistic renderings of the history of Soul Edge can be seen painted on its walls. The bio for this stage wonders who might have opened the seal, and yeah, that's a good question. If this was where Soul Edge was kept for centuries before being used again, then it stands to reason that Cervantes would have broken the seal. Siegfried took the sword off of Cervantes' body, so unless that is connected to Nightmare's ending, in which Siegfried throws the sword into the abyss, then it can't be him. Charade appears on this stage in his profile, but there's nothing to suggest that he has a connection to the stage, so I have no idea. I love the look of the stage, the architecture is so cool, and the historical paintings look so good, and the statues with the eyes framing the long corridors really brings the interior together, and then the other side is the broken wall with the exposed exterior, and a storm raging outside, and it's so epic, and yeah, I love it. I think having this exterior bit is what actually brings the stage together for me and makes it more memorable. The song for Egyptian Ruins is called Chasing Death, and it really brings a lot of energy to the stage and fits in perfectly with the mix of Egyptian aesthetic and raging storm. It all feels appropriately epic and iconic and thrilling, and yeah, it's great. The song makes this an experience. I like Egyptian Ruins a lot. I feel like everything is there and almost comes together perfectly. My only issue is that I feel like there's something missing. I don't know what it is, but it holds this stage back from being on like libraries level, but nevertheless, this is an underrated and often forgotten stage for sure. Arguably the definitive stage of the game, Ostrheinsburg Chapel is Nightmare's base of operations. This place has been through a lot, as you can probably imagine, and is more of a ruin than a chapel now. This is where Soul Calibur and Soul Edge last clashed, and is where all the destined battles in the game take place. Mysteriously, some say the chapel bell can be heard ringing despite no one allegedly being here. Rumor has it the bell rings itself when a worthy warrior approaches. Naturally, this is the home of all the chaos. This stage is iconic. Ostrheinsburg is where everything comes to a head, and it feels appropriately grand and desolate. The gray skies, the giant organ, the stained glass windows, it all gives this eerie feeling that something is not right, and being set in a chapel really adds to this. I like the vibe a lot, and it leads perfectly into the final battle with Inferno. I don't have any real criticism of it. I guess desolate just isn't my vibe, but setting it in a chapel does make it a lot better than if it was any other old destroyed building. The theme song is Raise Thy Sword, which I think is one of the highlights of the stage. It feels like a final battle song and like doom is approaching. I love how it uses the organs to match the setting, and the horns make me think of like old-timey battles where there'd be people blowing horns and stuff. I hope that's real and I didn't just make that up. But yeah, I like this song. It gives the stage a lot of energy, which is always a good thing. I guess I'm a little lukewarm on the stage overall. It's very good and it does what it's meant to do, and I should love it more. It's still a solid A tier stage though, and really works in its context as the penultimate stage of history. Village of the Wind is Talim's home, located somewhere in Southeast Asia. This is the home of the people who worship the wind deity. I consider this the perfect starter stage for anyone new to Soul Calibur. It's big enough that you won't get knocked off in 2 hits, but small enough that any result, including wall hits, is possible. It takes full advantage of the visual possibilities of the system at the time, with beautiful lighting, a fully operating windmill, pretty landscapes and ocean views, and interesting sound design with the mechanical windmill. I would say I love this stage. It really does feel like Talim's stage too. Obviously this is where she lives, but from a purely aesthetic perspective, the light, the heart, the airiness of the stage really reflects Talim's personality, and also there are so many windmills. The song is really great too. Guided by Wind has like a celebratory adventure vibe to it that leans more into the journey will be difficult but you'll make it vibe rather than the you'll die on this journey vibe. I love the power of the horns. This is a really good piece and again complements the experience of the stage. Village of the Wind I would probably rank up there with Library. It feels like the perfect Soul Calibur stage in a lot of ways and accomplishes everything it's meant to at 110%. It's beautiful, it's fun, it's the Village of the Wind. So the next 5 stages are unlockable stages, and apparently that empowered the creative team to get kinda wild with their choices, so I mean, yeah, go off. Phoenix Court is another Imperial villa, this one located in the capital of Lee Dynasty, Korea. The Phoenix Court is renowned for its decor, and the main platform is used for matches of the extremely talented. When Hwang, the guy who dragged Seung Mina back home, performed on this stage, he was subsequently chosen to participate in the search for Soul Edge. Essentially, this place is the end goal for aspiring warriors. This is Seung Mina's stage, and this is either because she has performed on this stage, or because her father, I think, owns the place. Phoenix Court is gorgeous. They weren't lying in the bio about its renowned appearance. The stage has a day and night variation, and it looks beautiful in both. I love dragons, so the dragon mural is especially appealing to me, but I love the whole look, and the small details of the seating and the window view add so much. This is a gorgeous stage. It's not too big and not too small, so the match can really go anywhere, and you know I love that. Sword of the Patriot is the song that plays here, which is a fitting title not only for the stage, but for the absolutely triumphant sounding piece of music it labels. The song is great. It has a really strong patriotic feeling to it and really does make fights here feel like tests of strength. Phoenix Court is great. It's got a classic feel to it, it's beautiful, it has a banger theme, and most importantly, it's fun to play on. Lakeside Coliseum is literally what the name says. It's a coliseum off a lake somewhere in Europe. It's meant to call back to the thrill of the coliseums in ancient Rome, though personally I'd rather be in one of those coliseums, and it's a privilege to witness and even bet on battles here. There's not really any one character associated with this stage, but like Egyptian ruins, Charade and Necrid have both used it for their weapon demonstration and character profiles. The stage is a large square with 2 variations, one with no walls and one with all walls. This feels like a very traditional throwback kind of stage, especially considering its inspiration in Roman Colosseums. I think it's a bit boring though. I'm not sure if that's a controversial opinion or not, but yeah, I don't care much for this stage. It's not horrible, but it's definitely a bottom tier stage for me. I guess I just wish it was doing something more unique. I do like the song though, I will give it that. It's called Confrontation, and whereas Sword of the Patriot feels more like a test of performance, Confrontation feels more like a test of strength. I really like the song. I just wish it accompanied a more interesting stage. Lakeside Coliseum is the less interesting sibling of Phoenix Court. Both are meant to be this battle performance arenas, and while I definitely like Coliseum's gladiator and a cave vibes, Phoenix Court is just the more appealing stage. The one win Coliseum has though is its 4 walls variation, which is something that Phoenix Court does not have. If you're not interested in ring outs as a possibility, then this is a good choice. However, it's not enough to outweigh the meh kind of stage design for me, and there's another stage with an all walls variation that I'd rather play on anyway. It can't compete with the more interesting stages. We've struck gold with this one. Money Pit is the hole in which Verci, Voldo's sex master, hid all his money and treasures. It's now where Voldo protects Verci's treasures and legacy from potential intruders. Apparently it's also full of booby traps, so God help you if you decide you want any of that sweet gold for yourself. The stage is a hexagon and has 4 variations total. There's standard, small, large, and standard with all walls. This is the all walls stage I was talking about. The standard is the most balanced, I would say, for gameplay, but if you want some real fun, play on the small variation because Astaroth will knock your ass off in 2 hits. Money Pit has kind of a sewer vibe to it with its corridors and gates. It's a very unique looking stage and all of the audio here has an echo effect on it to really immerse you in the depth. Of course this is Voldo's stage and for such a strange character I think it's totally appropriate that his stage is a bit off too. It feels dark and dirty and cold and exactly how I imagined Verci was when he was alive. The song is also very weird. It's called Ordinary Pain, which is an interesting title, and the song almost does have this mad devotion feeling to it. It has parts that feel somber and nostalgic that get cut off by driving horns and drums as if you're being brought back to face an enemy. It's a really interesting song that feels unlike any of the other songs in the game. It almost doesn't even feel like a battle song. Money Pit is cool. It's so different and matches Voldo's whole vibe. This thing that appears to be dirty and weird on the outside but is full of treasures below the surface, you know, Voldo. And it has all the variations you could want, which for a fighting game is the perfect way to ensure that your stage has staying power. Money Pit is a great stage and man, that echo is so cool. I would say Egyptian Crypt is the climax to Egyptian Ruins, stroke? Crypt is what's underneath ruins and is thought to be designed to lock something away. The crypt is also quite advanced technologically, which might be helpful if you're trying to keep an eternal demonic sword out of the public eye. Definitely still theorizing that this is where Cervantes first got Soul Edge. It doesn't have to be connected to one of our characters, but I like it better that way, so. The stage has 3 selectable variations, although there are a couple more that only appear in Weapon Master mode. The selectable stages are an ice stage, a quicksand stage, and a fire ring stage. The other variations are like a square, rectangle, triangle. As you might expect, the selectable 3 also have gameplay effects. The ice stage is slippery and the echo effect is back from Money Pit. The quicksand stage has you slowly sinking into the sand if you're not moving. Side note, I used to love that particular variation when I was a kid and now I don't know what kind of drugs I was on because I hate it now. And the fire ring has a ring of fire on which if you stand too long, you will get lit. I don't know why the plane variations aren't selectable. They're obviously not as iconic, but sometimes I want to be able to play on this stage without getting fucked over by a gimmick. I would only ever choose Fire Ring to play on because you're basically playing a different game if you select either of the other 2. Otherwise, Egyptian Crypt is stunning and I love playing on it. I already liked Egyptian Ruins and this is just that, but like next level. I love the look of the stage. It really feels like you're deep in this ancient crypt, except for the 240p torches burning in the background. This stage is gorgeous and the music. Okay, the song is called Maze of the Blade and that includes more low-key variations that play on the Weapon Master versions of the stage. Those variations are good, but the part that plays on the selectable stages and like boss battles is a fucking boulder to the face. This song slaps. Easily my favorite song in the game. The like electric guitars, strings, beat, it makes every match feel like this epic duel in like a vortex of hell. What a banger, man. And especially if you're playing a dungeon and you finally get to the end and are greeted with this song, magnifique. Egyptian Crypt is a great stage with absolutely iconic music and a really memorable, specific look. I do think 2 out of the 3 selectable variations are more gimmicks than playable stages, and I don't know why they didn't give us at least 1 standard variation, but despite all that, it's still one of my favorite stages in the game, and I wasn't kidding when I called this stage the climax. I literally came Labyrinth is the 5th and final unlockable stage and continues the maze-like theme of Egyptian Crypt. Labyrinth isn't set anywhere specific, but is an example of intricately designed, complex corridors and confusing paths, you know, a labyrinth. No one knows why it exists or what purpose it serves, it just exists, and that's about how I would describe humans as a species. This stage has 3 variations, a large rectangle, a small square, and a medium-sized triangle. If you're hoping for a reasonable fight, however, then the large rectangle is your only option because triangle and square will get you one-shotted by a certain undead giant. I don't have strong feelings about the way Labyrinth is designed. It looks like a labyrinth. I like that the platforms are surrounded by water and the overall blue-toned aesthetic, but otherwise it's not super memorable. I shouldn't say I don't like it though. I am a whore for color, so if you got a strong hue, I will definitely be selecting you. Also, this stage has fireflies or something flying around, and that immediately gets you many points. The song is kind of cool. It's called Labyrinth of the Moonlight, and again has variations like Crypt when it's played as a dungeon. I'm definitely getting the vibe of that title from the song, and I like how mysterious it feels. It goes really well with its backstory. I would say Labyrinth is a bop, but it doesn't slap. I think this stage is a necessary concept to have in a 16th century fantastical fighting game, so I'm happy it's here, but it won't be winning any awards. But goddamn if fireflies aren't the way to my heart. And there you have it, all 15 selectable stages. We're almost done, but we do have one more stage to go over, and it's one of the most iconic in the game. It's the Devil's Butthole. Hell, essentially. This is Inferno's stage and is where you'll always fight him at the end of Arcade, Time Attack, Team Battle, and Survival. It's just an infinite barren wasteland, but the orange glow of fire burning beyond the mountains in the background and from the lava cracking through the earth below your feet, epic. I will admit that the big thing that makes this stage great too is the fire that falls on the ground as you beat up on Inferno, which isn't technically a feature of the stage, but you will always fight him here and thus it will always be a thing. Hellfire is an amazing piece of music that perfectly encapsulates the visuals of the stage and the villain and the stakes of the situation. This really feels like an end of the road, this is the final battleground, confronting evil kind of song, and say it with me now, really adds to the experience of the stage. Tartarus is awesome. I think most people will agree that final battle arenas need to be appropriately epic, iconic, and relevant to the story and its villain, and Tartarus absolutely fulfills that. It's the perfect conclusion to a grand fantastical adventure, and it goes down in history for me as one of the best final boss stages ever. And that's the last stage! Woohoo! I think overall the stages in this game are very good. Most feel very unique from one another and have something special about them specifically. There's definitely room for improvement, and I hope as we review the other games in the series we see more character relevant stages, but Soul Calibur 2 puts in a valiant effort with strong results. The stage of The stage of history has certainly been set. Let my party people at. So I've already talked about the stage music and touched on some of the other pieces, but I want to specifically go over the music in its own section. Soul Calibur 2's music leans hard into its aesthetic as a 16th century fantastical warrior focused story. I don't know music theory or anything, so my terms are going to be kind of vague, I guess. There was clearly a lot of effort put into making this music memorable and iconic. Under the Star of Destiny, which is the opening movie song, is a timeless piece of art that immediately lets you know what kind of experience you're gonna have. History unfolds, the character select music has this incredible blend of adventure and wanderlust that makes you excited to see what comes next. I really love this song. I still can't think of a reason for why the main menu has no music. I do really consider that a fault. It kills all the momentum. Out of the stage songs, my favorites are Unwavering Resolve, Guided by Wind, No Turning Back, Hellfire, and Maze of the Blade Final Variation. Also, big shout out to the Noble Blade, which is the song that plays during Raphael's weapon demonstration. So cool on its own, and paired with Raphael, iconic. As for music I haven't talked about, with each character ending comes one of 4 different ending songs based on the goodness or badness of the ending. I don't remember who has what song, but in my perceived order of good to bad ending, the songs are titled The Battle Ends, Burning Soul, The Journey Continues, and Slave of Desire. I would say The Battle Ends sounds like peace, Burning Soul sounds like triumph, The Journey Continues sounds like resolve, but also numbness, and Slave of Desire sounds like pure terror. Literally, Slave of Desire scared me as a kid. They're all only about 40 seconds long, but each perfectly captures the feeling that they're supposed to be giving. The Destined battles also have their own pieces of music. I didn't realize there was more than one at first. I guess I wasn't paying attention. The first is If There Were Any Other Way, and this song is amazing. I've said it many times, but this song perfectly captures the emotional turmoil associated with having to go against a friend and ally. The melody feels like it's in pain, struggling with what's about to happen. It also uses a refrain from Under the Star of Destiny, which is awesome. one. The other song is Nothing to Lose, and while I don't like this one as much as the other, Nothing to Lose has some really wild dynamics and moments. The moment it really kicks into gear after the first downer part is absolutely badass. The song is really cool and is a really interesting take on the idea of fighting your sworn enemy. Oh my god, the art gallery music. This song is called Healing Winds, and it literally feels like it's healing my soul. The song is so nostalgic, triumphant, mournful, serene, talented, brilliant, iconic, never been done before. I think many people will agree this is one of the best pieces of music in the game and honestly in the franchise. Weapon Master houses many tracks. Tales of Souls and Swords is what plays when you first begin the mode. Beginning as a quiet, somber piece, the song progresses into this ruckus statement of the wild journey that's to come. I've only actually heard the song once or twice in context, but listening to it again on YouTube it's really good. Quest for Glory is the song you'll be hearing most, as it's the main theme of Weapon Master. A steadfast feeling of focus and intention. Quest for Glory makes you feel like a warrior on the path to greatness. This song is really great and is probably the most Warrior's Journey sounding song in the whole game. Wind Shadow is the song that plays in extra chapters and has this kind of off the beaten path vibe. It's a little more mysterious, like danger could be lurking around any corner. It's a good theme, and I like that it only plays in 2 chapters. It's not as good as the main theme, but it works to switch up the feeling based on the story at that point. Into the Whirlwind plays in the chapter you unlock after you've reached level 72. This chapter sees you going up against other weapon masters, and thus the theme has an appropriately test your might kind of feeling to it. It feels like the last big push before the culmination of the journey. The final piece in Weapon Master mode is Whispers of the Sword, the song that plays when you've defeated the final boss. Interestingly, it has a very calm, like relieving vibe to it. I would say this is a bit low key to end on, but this song is followed by the credits song, which is much more of what you would expect. And finally, Path of Destiny and Path of Destiny 2 are the credit songs, and again, they really capture that feeling of contentment after a long journey's success. They're really the perfect ending songs to a game full of not only great music, but adventure, thrill, pain, struggle, hope, and perseverance. The music in this game is wonderful, and I would consider it invaluable to the experience of Soul Calibur 2. I know this game is like 20 years old, but thank you again now to the music team that worked on this game. It is the heart and soul of Soul Calibur. I like how I talked about miscellaneous stuff earlier and said that I didn't know where to put it, then put in a section specifically for stuff like this. The announcer and the versus screen taunts are perfect and ingrained into the DNA of Soul Calibur, and you can't convince me otherwise. I already talked about the music and how amazing that is, but I would be remiss if I didn't also highlight the game's sound design. There's something about it that feels very, visceral, but in a loud, uncanny way. The sword slashes and shield hits and grab sounds are all exaggerated enough that they feel fantastical and video gamey, but not so much that they sound fake or lose their oomph. My favorite sounds outside of combat are the scrolling and select sounds on the main menu. It almost sounds like when a blacksmith is hammering a big weapon. I don't know what they actually used for it, but to me it sounds medieval and weapon related, and that's really fucking cool. The unblockable attack sounds in combat actually are very good too. It sounds like an actual mini explosion when they connect, and that's really satisfying to me. There's some glitches here and there, like if a character falls off the stage in a weird way, there might be a loud sword slash sound effect that plays as they zoom over the side. But I actually really like that. It's kind of part of the charm of the game for me. I love the sound design in this game, potentially more than any other in the franchise, so I think it's worth shouting out. Box art. So I have the GameCube version, which matters because the box art is different for each console, because the guest is different for each console. This version features the iconic polyamorous relationship of Link, Cassandra, and Mitsurugi, the Soul Calibur sword, and a green tint just to subconsciously let you know how toxic a relationship that trio would have. So confusingly, this color scheme is only the case when I looked up the box art online though, because my copy of the game has a blue theme, so I guess instead of toxicity, it's waves of sadness. The other versions feature 4 characters on the cover, but I think 3 is more aesthetically pleasing, so GameCube wins the cover art war. GameCube also has the best layout of images and text on the back. Argue with your mother. I guess the goal of each cover was to highlight the guest character, a new character, and a veteran or two, but clearly one of the 4 newborns is loved a little less than the others. The unlock system. Yeah, it's nice having to actually unlock characters. I only think this is worth mentioning because most games don't do this anymore. Any unlockables now are just paid DLC, but it's rewarding to me to have characters and features become available after you've put work into the game. I would have thought that this was a logical conclusion to come to, but here we are. Anyway, I think the unlock system is pretty good. I think the only way to unlock characters in stages in this game is to fulfill certain criteria in Weapon Master mode, which I do think is a bit limiting if someone isn't interested in that mode. I think what subsequent games do, like unlocking a character after a certain number of matches is played, is a good alternative to this. Being able to purchase weapons in Weapon Master mode is the most appropriate of the unlocks. The mode is literally called Weapon Master, and if you're wanting to play well in the extra modes, then you're probably already interested in playing Weapon Master. Same with costumes, they're purely cosmetic, and I always think of a feature like that as being unlocked through currency, in-game currency. I think I'm okay with weapon demonstrations being unlocked this way too. Again, it's more of a cute bonus than anything else. I wish Art Gallery could be unlocked more organically though. I don't know why I feel that way, it just doesn't feel comparable in my mind. I like having to unlock things in games that actually matter, at least in a fighting game. It gives you more incentive to keep playing and get better outside of, like, you know, being a pro gamer. And I think that's everything I wanted to talk about in Soul Calibur 2. Nothing like a quick little trip down memory lane. My final thoughts on this game are that it's great. I love this game, and that's not just because of my nostalgia for it. I was literally 6 or 7 when I started playing this game, so not a lot has changed for me. I'm obviously a lot better at the game, and I just have a better understanding of how video games work now. And going back and spending dozens of hours revisiting it and trying to understand what drew me to it has been really enjoyable for me. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I really, learned anything, despite that making a better story for a video, but I did have fun giving some love to a game that shaped how I engage with video games. Did I learn anything? I guess I learned where my taste in men comes from. I can see why this game is considered the peak of the series for a lot of people. It's easy to pick up, but doesn't feel like it's dumbing anything down. It's complex without gatekeeping. It's fast-paced, flashy, unbelievably pretty for the time. And this is what gives it such wide appeal. Remember that this game came out in 2003, and yet it's looking like a PS3 era game. Absolutely brilliant game design and art design is what makes Soul Calibur 2 such a hit. The other part of that is the choice to include Link as a guest character. This is single-handedly the best of the best decisions the Soul Calibur team has ever made. While Heihachi and Spawn were appealing in their own right at the time, Link is a certified icon, especially coming off the heels of the cultural reset that was Ocarina of Time. Best guest character they have ever included in the games, and he didn't feel like an inappropriate forced choice. The story of Soul Calibur is essentially one of resisting temptation and overcoming evil. I think the title gives the impression that Soul Calibur itself will be heavily featured in the game, but ironically it mostly just appears whenever a character has already overcome their demons. This is a game about pain in more ways than one. Yes, individual stories get a little convoluted and some are just extremely confusing, but all fighting games do this. The core of each story is understandable to me, and that's what's most important. Not all characters are completely equal in quality, but no one is being hung out to dry. As far as the modes go, I do think the choice to do standard and extra versions of most modes is a mistake. I see what they were going for, and it's kind of a fun way to take advantage of the weapon select system, but one, I don't think weapons with different attributes is enough of a draw to warrant double versions of modes, and two, some of the standard modes are rendered pointless once the extra version is unlocked. I wouldn't want them to necessarily get rid of modes, but trimming the fat and repackaging some of them would have helped the overall design. Soul Calibur 2 is not without its faults, but it's still a brilliant example of how to make a good fighting game. I love this game and I would recommend it to the 6 or 7 people who have never played it. Do I recommend you buy a GameCube to be able to do that? Yes, I do. And don't even just take my word for it. Reviewers at the time gave Soul Calibur 2 overwhelmingly positive reviews, and by 2007, the GameCube version alone had sold 1 million copies. And if that wasn't proof enough of its belovedness, there was an HD online version released in 2013, and none of the other games have had that. Though that one includes Heihachi and Spawn, but not Link, so, you might as well throw it out. And if you search forums and Reddit to see how fans rank Soul Calibur 2 in the series, Soul Calibur 2 is basically always a top 2 game. So I think this game is great, and I mean, you probably could have gathered that. You've watched a 3-hour video on a 20-year-old game. So I want to end things off with the question, where do we go from here? But Aiden, you're probably thinking, this came out in 2002, you dumb bitch. There are literally 4 mainline sequels that have already come out. And to that I say, stop bullying me! I just want to pretend for a second that this is like a new game with no sequels, no confirmed prospects, it just exists as is with its previous entries. Having experienced this game in all its glory, what would I want the series to do next? We'll start with gameplay, because that's the most important thing. I want the pacing of the gameplay to stay the same. This faster paced gameplay with simple 2-hit combos works super well, and I don't want to see that sacrificed. Now I know going forward, fighting games in general are going to become more combo heavy because it's flashier, satisfying, and the games being on console means players can spend more time practicing. I think this is fine as long as it doesn't become a necessity to win and the inputs for decent combos don't become overly complicated. I shouldn't have to embrace permanent carpal tunnel syndrome just to play successfully. Some stages have walls that have no collision. Let's get rid of that. If there's a wall, I want to be able to throw my whole body into that wall. Otherwise, make it a hole. Get rid of or improve soul charge because at this point it's a useless mechanic. Add more color to stages. We're on the right track. These stages are very pretty, but take it to the next level. I want to be almost blinded by a bright pink or something. I don't know. Make more consistent alternate costumes for characters. The first costume should be the definitive, memorable, good look of the character, and the second costume should show another, lesser seen side of them. Something that references their personality or their backstory. Third costumes can be whatever, but please make them look good. Something can be funny and cool and pretty at the same time. I guess because Nightmare Siegfried is basically the main character, his ending is the canon ending. Siegfried threw Soul Edge into an abyss, so while Nightmare is iconic and I don't want to get rid of him, I think now would be the best opportunity to bring in a new Soul Edge wielder. We could always bring in a new character, but I would rather actually go with a pre-established character, and that character would be Raphael.
As expected.
Raphael's story is the perfect tragic villain setup. He grew up in an environment with nothing but pain, but now with Amy, he has the opportunity to resist the temptation to turn to darkness and give someone else the life he never had. What's sad about Raphael, though, is that it's not that simple. As his story in this game highlights, he can only understand a better life within the bounds of the one he's lived. His goal is to get Soul Edge because he believes it'll give him the power to smite anyone who would get in the way of his happy ending. An ending where Amy is happy, but potentially more importantly, an ending where the pain done unto him is paid for. In his ending, he has a moment where he realizes that taking Soul Edge will mean trading his free will for power, and he convinces himself that he will be able to resist this, but his decision to go down this path in the first place means he has already given up his free will. He could be better, but his pain is too much. The final words of his ending allude to a period of unquantifiable death, and that coupled with his capacity for good is what makes him an appealing villain to me. He falls somewhere in between the pure evil of Cervantes and purely good intentions of Siegfried, so he would avoid being more of the same. Gameplay wise, I also thought that Raphael's style could get a bit of an upgrade, and so giving him Soul Edge would definitely do that. Raphael is only one half of this story though. Amy is central to Raphael's character development, and she is an interesting character in her own right who deserves to be brought to the forefront. So my continuation of this story would be set maybe like 5 years after the events of this game. One, because Amy is set up here to be like 10 years old or something, and I don't think it's appropriate to have a 10-year-old child as a character in this game. And two, because Amy and Raphael's bond needs time to develop before they're put into this position. By this point, Amy would really see Raphael as her father figure and her as his daughter, but it wouldn't be so far away from their traumatic situations that it would undercut the emotional complexity of the situation. Raphael has had time to train Amy as a fighter and begin to learn how to love unconditionally. However, even after all this time, he still has it in his mind that the only true way to protect himself is through power. Amy, meanwhile, has of course started to learn how to fight, but also what it feels like to have anyone care for her, though she still finds it difficult to completely let her walls down because there's always the chance that he could at any moment turn against her. And because I'm a sadistic storyteller, this is the perfect time to threaten them both with losing the thing they love most.
Laugh out loud.
This is where a new character would come into play. I don't know exactly what their story would be, but I would love to see a sorcerer in a sequel. One, because I love magic, and half magic, half weapon fighting styles would be sick as fuck. And two, because we need someone who has the ability to get a weapon out of an abyss, and I realize abyss could just mean really deep hole that anyone could climb into, but I don't care, I want a sorcerer. This person has some investment in seeing Soul Edge rise to its former glory, and out of the characters available, perhaps sees the most potential in Raphael. Also look, I mean, Raphael's destined battle is literally with Nightmare, whom he accuses of being too weak for the sword, and he's the only one who got all the guest character destined battles. So I don't think it's a stretch to assume that they thought Raphael was important. Essentially, this character would retrieve Soul Edge and present Raphael with the opportunity to take it for himself. After 5 years, he might be hesitant, but perhaps there could be something in the story where Amy is attacked, whether randomly or purposefully by this new character, I don't know. Raphael's need to prove that he can protect Amy and also his trauma would drive him to take the sword. Obviously, I haven't worked out all the details of the story, but what's appealing to me is the complicated nature of Raphael and Amy's relationship and how their whole relationship has been defined by trauma. Raphael, as the new villain and influenced by Soul Edge's manipulation, struggles to see the world as anything but his family out to get him, and it wouldn't even be unreasonable to expect that he might eventually turn on Amy if she rejected his villainous methods. And Amy, Amy, as the new protagonist, struggles to continue to believe that Raphael does in fact love her and hasn't turned on her like everyone else. She loves him, but like Raphael, her trauma has not been dealt with completely, and so she doesn't know what to do. We're not completely dumping Siegfried though. He's actually extremely important to this story, as he is the only character who understands the all-consuming evil of Soul Edge and how it clouds your mind to the truth. They've already set up a relationship between Siegfried and Raphael, and I would continue that into the next game. Siegfried is still trying to recover from what Soul Edge did to him, and because of his good nature, wants to spare Raphael that lost time. However, Raphael, especially under the influence of Soul Edge, would likely see him as merely trying to manipulate him due to jealousy and to take the power away from him. Ivy could also be an interesting character for Amy to interact with. Ivy's father, Cervantes, was also a Soul Edge wielder, and so I think it'd be interesting to see how they'd interact, considering their similar experiences, and also see if Ivy's feelings towards her probably now dead father, if they've changed. Cervantes is now 2 Soul Edge wielders ago, and I think it's just better for Ivy's story if he's just been dealt with and she can be allowed to grapple with that. Those are really the 4 characters that I've worked stuff out for. Everyone else I'm sure can fit in. But I think this as a continuation of the story would be the best direction to go, considering what I see as the main point of the Soul Calibur story. On the surface, these games present as good versus evil, but most of the time, Soul Calibur doesn't even really appear. These stories are more about how you deal with pain. It's not about choosing to be good, it's about choosing not to do evil. Soul Edge is a stand-in for those who would take advantage of the vulnerable, but also the choice to allow pain to consume you. Soul Edge is the ever-present threat of losing yourself to trauma, and Soul Calibur is the fleeting realization that pain is not forever. Raphael and Amy's story is not one of good versus evil. It's of a lifetime of pain and betrayal and fear, and the hope that, despite all of that, you are more than your demons. And if that's not a relatable human story, then I don't know what is. As for new characters, I obviously want to see Amy, who would fight a lot like Raphael, but with a more useful, pragmatic flair. I would still like to see a weapon-based sorcerer character. Maybe they can facilitate Raphael's transformation. And I want a female Berserker type of character. I don't know what that story is, but I'd like to see a female character in the role of slow but powerful and long range like Astaroth. Expanding on what I want from stages, include stages from a greater variety of the world. Story-wise, you can easily explain it away with portals or whatever. I want to see stages set in South America, Africa, the Arctic, because why not? And continue to be creative with stage layout. And finally, let's talk modes. First off, I want to see an actual canonical story mode, something that includes all the characters but focuses on the main ones. In my story, that would be Amy and Raphael. And then your arcade mode endings are more like what-if episodes in which that character obtains or destroys Soul Edge. It's the best of both worlds. Secondly, I'd like to see Weapon Master mode expanded upon even more. It's a really good mode, but I'd like to see the relevance of its story get beefed up. It can either be non-canonical or be going alongside the main story, and I think the main character should be a custom character. And of course, yes, this is how I confirm that I want character creation in the game. It's just a fun novelty, and I think it would complement a mode like Weapon Master really well. You can just use the pre-existing character styles. I don't think it matters, although if you want people to actually play those characters outside of Weapon Master, you should probably create a couple of unique styles. But yeah, let's beef up Weapon Master into essentially an alternate story mode that focuses on challenges. Speaking of challenges, let's take advantage of the wild challenge battle effects that exist in the game and put them in 1, a specific challenge match single player mode, and 2, allow them to be accessible options in versus mode. That feels like a huge oversight to me, so let's correct that. Bring team battle back, but make it more like a tag system where you can swap a character out during the match. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of fights back to back with lowered health. I'd also like to see a practice adjacent mode which specifically teaches you how to use all the game systems. Not everyone learns best just figuring it out on their own, so give them somewhere to start. Oh, and put all the art in one mode. It's just the art gallery. Make it like a real art gallery. Give me the option to play versus against a CPU, and finally give me the option to set difficulty and other settings for a certain mode within that mode. It feels like a simple ask, okay? And I think that's it. Those are all the things I want to see in a sequel to Soul Calibur 2. Again, obviously, I know what actually exists in Soul Calibur 3, but I don't know. This is a fun way for me to take stock of what we've been given, and it gives me something concrete to go off of when I inevitably make the video for that game. I love the Soul Calibur game so much, and I've had a lot of fun revisiting Soul Calibur 2 and making this video. These are legitimately some of my formative experiences, for better or worse, and I get a lot of joy in sharing that with other people. We will eventually get to the game that some seem to consider the start of the downfall for the franchise and all its glitchy glory. I'm very proud of you if you sat through this whole thing. Your warrior's journey will never be forgotten. Peace, have a good night. I need a nap.
Soul Calibur 2.